Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Alderman Sizmarsky. Alderman Woods. Here. Alderman Roy Wesley. Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Sorrentino.
Here.
Alderman Messina. Alderman Catalano.
Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here. And Alderman Sizmarsky's here now. Okay, make a motion to approve the Finance and Administration Committee minutes from February 11th, 2016. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Report and recommendation, 2017 budget. I talked to Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson's going to go through his slides. If we could please let him do his slide, each one, and then at that time, if we have questions on the slides or in your booklets on a certain section, we'll ask the questions then. And if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next section. Mr. Wilson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the Chairman said, the slides, after you get through the first few, which are kind of like the primer, rules of the road type of thing, the slides do correspond with the tabs in the budget book. So if we get to the administration slide on the screen, there'll be an administration tab in the budget book. So it's easy to kind of follow along between and articulate between the slides and then the detailed pages within the book.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Alderman,
Peter said you can't, no question.
well, we'll let Alderman E. Wesley ask his question now.
Oh, no, you can't
No,
play
you can't
favorites.
pick and choose.
Go ahead, Mr. E. Wesley. Okay, Mr. Wilson, let's continue.
Well, thank you. As you can see, we're here this evening to discuss the proposed fiscal year 2017 budget, which would begin May 1st of this year, running through April 30th of next year. So the overview stuff, we have 6 fund types. General fund, which is our main operating fund, special revenue fund, whose revenues are restricted for special purposes, thus special revenues, capital projects. We had the CIP meeting a month and a half ago. It's by and large the bulk of the capital projects funds. The internal service fund, which is the SURF fund, which is the sinking fund that we fund for the vehicle replacements within the city. Enterprise funds, which are the business type activities, metro parking lot, sanitation fund, water and sewer. And the trust and agency funds, which is the police pension fund and the special service area fund. This slide's getting a little old, but it's still good information. The fund balance definitions as we go through the book for the governmental fund types, the 5 categories there. By and large, depending on the fund type, they default to one of the other, so not a lot really to worry about with those, but it's just nice to always present what the different fund balance classifications are. So this year we have 15 active funds. There is a 16th fund in the book, the old equipment replacement fund that's inactive. It just has a 0 balance. We're presenting it and carrying it just so all the numbers on the front end of the budget book tie out. If we delete it, then they would tie out, so the numbers have to tie out. Of the 15, 7 have a proposed budget increase, including the general fund. 8 have a proposed budget decrease. Capital spending, the last 4 or 6 years have increased. This year there is a decrease. The 2 biggest drivers of that are the completion of the treatment plant project, and last year we added the $10 million for the intersection improvement program. But after we added that in the budget, the state informed us that they were going to pay out the money first directly to the vendors instead of flowing through us, which as it turns out has been a very prudent thing for us to have agreed to with the state and their issues. So we were able to take that $10 million off the books and not have to budget for that this year, which really led to the decrease in the capital spending. Fiscal 17, the big projects, the Mill Road reconstruction, both the surface and the water main. That's the 3rd year of 4 for the Ward 2 street reconstructions. The 2nd year of the safety improvement program, and then just the continued water main and drainage improvements. The drainage improvements by and large over in Ward 3 this year in water mains. We did change the methodology on replacement from 50 to approximately 70-75, but we're still being mindful of that when we're doing reconstruction and resurfaces going forward. So the process, and Chairman Jacob referred to this a little bit, each department or fund has their own sheet and tab that has the narrative, the org chart if applicable, kind of an explanation of what it does, and some performance measures, again, if applicable. Also, the expanded level sheets are green or red. The red's a little on the pink side. The red, couldn't really see the black ink very well, so defaulted to the pink. And then, each tab, before we go on, we'd like to gain a consensus on it. This way, a couple different things, we're not bouncing around, just try to go through in order. That way we don't miss anything, and we're not trying to say, well, I want to go back and talk about this, or, we try to synthesize each section as best we can and then move forward. So moving forward, this is the construction of the book. The general fund is first, special revenue funds, capital projects funds, internal service, enterprise, trust and agency funds. Today is obviously February 25th, so we're going to start at the beginning and get through as much as possible. And then March 10th, if needed, is when we'll hit the remainder, or if there's anything that, we need further information on, things of that nature. So big picture, this is all funds excluding transfers. You can see the numbers presented there on the screen, and budget to budget, so 16 budget, 17 proposed, that drop in 10 million. By and large, like I said, is the change in the funding methodology of the intersection program. Obviously, there are nominal changes throughout the book, but that's the lion's share of that $10 million adjustment. And then on the expenditure side as well, the completion of the treatment plant and the funding methodology for the intersection study. Sorry, not trying to sound like a broken record, but that drove about $10 to $10.5 million worth of revenue and expenses through the 2 years. A couple of just housekeeping items on the slides as we go through. Unless they're otherwise noted, the personnel costs are made up due to increased salaries, the FICA and IMRF. The city's IMRF rate fell slightly this year. Last year it was at 12.29. This year it's at 11.96. So we picked up 0.33% on that, so it reduced. Unfortunately, though, with such a small decrease in that, the IMRF might have gone up slightly due to the increase in salaries. It's just a function of the math between the two numbers. And then on the slides as we go forward, on some of the slides below the charts, we list a reason for an increase or a decrease. It's not an exhaustive reasoning. There might be some things that change $100 or $200, but we tried to hit the items that were, larger in nature. So if something changed 10, 20, 30%, we listed that. If it changed, $100, $200, we didn't necessarily list that out. So what's listed isn't every change within the budget, but it's the one that really, by and large, drove the net change within that subcategory within the department. And then, as the chairman said, just, we'll go through the slides, and then if there's a question for each department or each section, feel free, and we'll address them as they come. So getting into the general fund, we're currently on track to end 2016 with approximately $28,000 surplus. You can see we had budgeted around $32,000, so we're pretty close on that number. And there's a recap of fiscal 16, the budget, and where we're projected to end out. And then, as presented tonight, fiscal 17 is expected to end the year with a $12,129 surplus. So going through the revenues, you can see the revenues overall are up about 0.7%. Taxes are up $293,000. The bulk of that being in sales tax, income tax, and use tax. That is offset slightly by a continued decline and flattening in the telecom tax revenue. License permits, building fee permits, revenues are up. This year we have another payment from the facility on Irving coming through there. And then we're also picking up some permit revenue through the new inspection program with the fire department, as well as, anticipated some permits up through the TIF and Thorndale corridor area as well. Some of the ones that are down, the charges for service. The big one in there really is the administrative fee for the impounds. In talking to the police department, that has flattened out, and then people, along with the driver's license legislation, they're also getting a little craftier on being able to kind of circumvent some of the tow rules. you know, and how to get out of getting their car towed, apparently. So people are getting craftier in that regard, it seems. The fines and fees, a little bit of decrease in the court fines. The big one is the TraxGuard system being down. We estimated it being down for approximately 6 months this year, so half of the fiscal year being down. When it does come back online, obviously then that revenue will pick up. There is an offsetting decrease in the expense to manage the TraxGuard program within the police department budget, and we did match that to 6 months to 6 months. And then the miscellaneous, slight decrease in that. The driver of that is the healthcare reimbursement with the sworn police officers leaving. Their contribution back to the city to reimburse for healthcare was eliminated, so that finally flushed itself out through this budget year.
Okay, I think we're all done with the slides? For no?
So going through, yes, this is the general fund, all funds put together. So it increased budgetarily all funds of about 0.9%, 117,000. The personnel line item is down largely due to a couple of retirements, and as you're all aware, the in-house dispatchers was eliminated, so that's why the personnel costs are down to the extent that they're down, as well as a slightly lower IMRF rate. The contractual number is up quite a bit related to the cost to paying for the services for the new dispatch center. The capital outlay is down in the general fund by and large due to we reallocated where a number of the IT maintenance agreements were previously budgeted out of. We moved them from there into a more appropriate line item for them. Some of them were in capital outlay, and they weren't capital outlay, they were maintenance agreements. So we felt it prudent to move it to a better home. And then the interfund transfer is down due to the reduction for the transfer to the SURF fund. And over the next couple of years, this will continue to flatten out. Last year was a pretty significant number because we had to capture an entire year, then half of a year, a third of a year. This year we're at a half of a year, a third of a year, a quarter of a year. So as we roll those numbers out and get into, doing sevenths of a year instead of entire years, that'll begin to flatten out quite a bit. So it's going like we expected. So in the general fund, there are 8 expanded level items. There's 1 red sheet or pink sheet in there, which is in the vehicle maintenance department. And then there's 7 green sheets, and you can see them listed there, 2 of which are personnel. And we'll hit those green sheets as we go through the department that they're applicable to. So again, not trying to bounce around, just presenting them on the front end so everybody's aware of what we're going to come across as we go through the book. All right, so now we're to the first operating department, which is administration. As you can see, the contractual service is up largely due to an increased cost associated with the engineers, as well as in the contractual, reclassifying those maintenance agreements into that from capital projects. Commodities, slight increase in fuel, vehicle maintenance, office supplies, and capital outlay, again, reclassifying of the maintenance agreements. I'll go back to. No.
Each department. So administration, if we have questions now, when he's done with the slides for administration, we can ask questions.
So we can talk now?
We thought you wanted to go through the whole slide.
No. Through each department, and I'm sorry if I was not clear on that, but each department. Mr. Mayor?
Well, if we're gonna start the book, I was gonna start in the financial summaries, my first question.
Sounds like a good place to start.
Okay.
Page 27. Under police pension fund investment income, the projected for this year, we budgeted an increase of 1.5, but we're actually gonna lose 300, and I understand it's part of the market, but you wanna let everybody, so everybody understands if there's any significant cost to us, extra or whatnot, going forward. You know what I'm saying? As far as the actuarial studies and whatnot.
Basically,
No, go ahead.
basically, they're looking and see what the
Well-
police pension may be asking for.
We'll-
Explain that.
We lost, basically, we show a loss of 300,000, and what does that mean as
Thanks,
far as the actuarial study coming up, or do we need to put in more money?
How
What?
did we lose 300,000?
Mr. Wilson, could you,
That's-
Mr. Wilson, could you elaborate, please?
Sure. You know, and as you see, when we get to the police pension, which is next to last in the book, a lot of that decrease is in the unrealized gain and loss category of their revenue stream. So, you know, by definition, it's unrealized, so they're saying that if they were to sell all of their investments, that's what they would return on that. So obviously, you know, as we're all aware that the market's been down, you know, a little bit since the beginning of the year. So if, you know, if that number holds and it trends out that way, that's the number that they'll be using for their actuarial study, which will show a slight decrease in revenue, which would likely lead to a greater than usual increase or request for funding the following year. So, you know, what that number will be as they spread it out over the amortization period, you know, kind of hard to say at this point, and then what the market's going to do until April 30th. But yeah, I mean, obviously, declining revenues, declining asset base would lead to a higher actuarial request in the future.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Mayor?
and that's all I wanted, explanation on the impact to the books, that's all.
Mr. E. Wesley?
I'll follow up with that. So the pension is in here, what they're going to be asking for down the line here? Because the point is, if we run shortfall now here, do we need to increase that? Because the reason, I think I know where he's going, that we don't want to be shortfall in our pensions, like some of these other states, towns are. So my question is, do we earmark more money in the pension to make sure we secure the pension at a level that we should be securing it at? Or are we dropping that pension fund now that we aren't going to meet the 85% or 65%? You know where I'm coming from?
Mr. Wilson?
Sure. So every year, the council has had a long-standing policy of funding what the pension fund has asked for out of the actuarial review. In this year's budget, we do fund what they ask for in the actuarial review. When the actuary goes through and does the review every year and comes up with the request, they base the request on, you know, the assets now. They have an assumed rate of return, and then they juxtapose that with the remaining years until they have to hit that funding threshold. So, you know, I mean, it's really a policy decision if you want to contribute more. But the actuary, when they calculate that out, they calculate out saying if, you know, X, Y, and Z happen, if you fund this much, we'll meet our goal in 33 years. So, I mean, it's really a policy question if you want to go above and beyond what they're asking for on an actuarial basis.
So
Alderman Wesley,
do
continue.
we have any idea what they're asking for? How much?
I mean,
Brad?
Right now? I mean,
well, for this year we do, because it's in here.
okay.
But going forward, I mean, yeah, I mean, aside from more than what this year's number is, I really
Okay.
don't have a guess.
Okay, do we have any other questions up here? I guess I'm gonna ask a couple, Brad. Page 41. Yeah. There's right-of-way usage fees, so we had budgeted 60,000 for 4/30/16, and show a projected of 100,000, and then we're going back to 60,000. Please explain that. Go ahead.
Sure. So 60,000 is, I guess, kind of the norm, what the number should be. We had one company that apparently changed ownership, and for whatever reason, basically thought that them changing ownership meant that they didn't have to pay us anymore. So we explained to them kindly that they did have to pay us and change of ownership didn't. So you'll notice in one of the preceding years, it was, 20,000. And so it's kind of just a smoothing out of that. So 60 is what the number, normally should be. It just took us a while to track down the company that thought they didn't have to pay us anymore.
Okay, the liquor licenses on page 41, so we budgeted 57, we're actually getting 72,140, and then 58,000. Please explain, why we're over.
Sure, so what we base the liquor license renewal fees on is if everybody just renews as is. And I think, perhaps the mayor could speak to this a little bit, but if there's a change of ownership, visitor management or whatever, then they have to get an entirely new liquor license, I believe, which is, sometimes the fees are higher than what the renewal is, but
The mayor has something to add there?
But didn't we have two new liquor licenses that, one was they didn't have liquor, we gave them liquor, and then the other one was a new restaurant came into town, they also got liquor. So that's why the initial payments, whether it's 5,000 or 10,000, depending what license they got, then the following year, it's only the renewal, that's why you had the bump, because we had those couple that we gave.
Question, there's a line item for auto rental, I'm just curious what that's all about. I mean, there's nothing there, but we had something budgeted, what is that for?
sure, in previous years, there was apparently a company in town that was renting automobiles, and we got a nominal percentage of that rental fee. The last number of months, I guess, this whole year, apparently they either ceased to exist or they ceased reporting. It just kind of came out of nowhere 3 or 4 years ago, and now it's gone back into the ether, so. Normally if you have a company like Hertz, Dollar, one of the big rental companies, that'd be a pretty significant rental stream for you, but this was some small shop, so it was, $30, $40 a month.
Alderman E. Wesley?
Let's go to the building permits. Projected 360,000, your proposal's 375. With all the stuff that's going to be going on, where did you come up with 375? Wouldn't you think that should be a little higher? I mean, yeah, I just think it's a little, I mean, it's great if we get more than 375, but I'm just saying, is it this?
Mr. Wilson?
So, yeah, you're correct. I mean, we would love that number to be significantly higher than that. Absent knowing of anything on the horizon and, starting to get that area going, we didn't want to really overextend on that number. So now if we knew that, there was 2 10-story buildings going up there, then yeah, sure, we'd have put something in. But absent having any concrete commitments up there, we did bump it up some in anticipation of bringing in some businesses, but we didn't want to, like I said, overshoot, and then, if that number came in lower than we expected, running into some difficulty that way. So probably played it pretty conservative in that regard on that number this year.
Okay, I have.
Okay. Go ahead,
one more.
Alderman.
The cable,
Alderman Wesley, could you just give the page number too, so everybody
41,
knows?
same, I didn't, 41, yeah. Cable TV franchise agreement, is that with both of them, AT&T and Comcast?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
So what, how much, do you have any idea what Comcast is, how much, and how much AT&T is?
Probably have to check.
Because I don't remember seeing the dollar amount that was
Not
worked out.
right off the top. I know Comcast is probably, 2 or 3 times higher than the AT&T numbers? But, I mean, we have it all downstairs, so I mean, if we could, get that to you if you wanted the breakdowns of them.
All right, because we might have to go back and revisit it, because I will tell you personally, there's a lot more people switching AT&T now. Because Comcast increased it $30 for almost every resident in this town for a basic cable. And if Comcast is not as much, then maybe we need to hit AT&T up more because now they're flipping. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the contracts are, man. So,
Yeah. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, Comcast is on a local franchise that was, we just renewed that, I don't know, maybe no more than 3 years ago when we added that PEG fee. AT&T isn't a local license, it's a state license. I believe their fee is set by their state license, their state franchise.
could you get those for us?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I do have a question on page 42. IPBC interest, we budgeted 125,000. The projected is going to be 80,000, and it's going back up to 120,000. You kind of explained that. I didn't realize the interest rates were going up like that.
Sure. And as I expressed to you, been asked this a couple times, and there's two parts, and, you know, I'll apologize in advance for forgetting the one part of it yesterday when I was asked this question. So one of the biggest factors to this is IPBC about a year and a half ago, year and a half ago, went through and revamped their investment policy and investment methodology. Before, the money was just sitting in two bank accounts, one of which was the Illinois funds, which was paying basically zero. They've since changed their investment policy and concentrations and have a significant amount of their money actually invested now in treasuries, mutual funds, things that are actually earning interest. I think last year or 2 years ago, interest earnings for IPBC was around 300,000. I think this past year was close to 1.5 million. So they've significantly increased their investment returns through their new funding policy. And the other thing, which is a little nuanced, is when the sworn officers left, there was an artificial rate bubble built in there, and so we didn't feel it overly prudent to impact everybody as adversely as possible, so we smoothed it out and ran it through that account.
Any other questions?
Where's it?
Alderman E. Wesley?
Where is the facade program? What's that?
Mr. Wilson?
The facade, the payouts is in the capital project, general capital projects.
Okay, I guess let's go into the administration, because that's before the misunderstanding that we couldn't ask any questions. I did have a question under administration. IT, page 47. We have IT professional services. We budgeted 28,000. We're projected to be at 37,018, and now we're budgeting $10,000. If you could please explain. Page 47.
Sure. So, again, not to sound like a broken record, but we did move a lot of those maintenance agreements from the IT equipment, which is on page 48, but there was one or two bigger IT maintenance agreements buried in that IT professional services line, so we moved those as well. So the very bottom line on page 47, which is now maintenance agreements dash IT, is a combination of some of the items from the IT professional services line item and the IT equipment line from the next page. And those are footnoted. I apologize, the number 3 is not there, but all those agreements are footnoted, footnote number 3 at the bottom of page 47.
Okay, and then I do have engineering services, budgeted 40,000. We're gonna spend up approximately 90,000, and we're budgeting 60,000.
Sure, in looking through that, there was a good deal of non-capital stormwater expenses in there, a lot of plan reviews, and there's a certain amount of pass-through on that, but there was a lot of plan review items, other stormwater items, and I believe, was it a new floodplain map or something with the county? They did something with the stormwater, the maps, and so that took up a significant amount of that.
Mr. Murmas?
And as you can see, if you go back to actual in 2014, that was 111,000, then you go 56,000, then we budgeted 40. It kind of fluctuates based on what's going on. It's trending down over time since we've had it. It used to be even higher than 111, so it's been trending down in general, but this year we had an inordinate amount of stormwater issues, which was a major bulk of the cost when we reviewed the invoices. There was also quite a bit of time investigated into CRS rating from like a 4 to a 5. That was quite lengthy. Again, it's, every year, it's hard to tell with that, but general is trending down.
Okay, I guess I have one final question. Education and training, we budgeted 475, spending 903. Now we're budgeting 575. Are we getting rid of some education and training, or if we're gonna spend $900 and we're going back down? Mr. Murmas?
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting rid of training. The 900, we had a couple new admin employees, so it was more this year, and we're anticipating it then going back down to normal levels.
Okay, I guess, does anyone else have any questions on administration? Okay, Brad, if we want to move to the next slide then, community development.
Clerk's office. It's the clerk's, yeah, no problem. So the clerk's office, I hate to say it's pretty, not a whole lot of excitement here on this one. Just nominal increase in salaries, contractually to go down a little bit due to the codifier fees. The codifier fees are, again, something that's kind of hard to predict, because every time, we pass an ordinance, they have to update the website. A few years ago, when the UDO was passed, there was a significant amount of money spent to the codifier because it was such a massive document to go through and update. But the last couple of years have been, a series of smaller ordinances that are easier to update, which cost us less. So I'm just trying to ratchet that down as, trying to conform with what we're seeing out there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay.
This part-time employee, at one time, we had a part-time employee. In the city clerk's office, back in 2014, why was that eliminated, or what was the deal on that?
Mr. Wilson?
I believe there was a, how do I say this? It was a staffing issue for a couple of months in the clerk's office, and so we had to bring somebody in to keep the office going for a while. But since that hasn't arisen again, we've been able to eliminate that line item going forward.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Community development slide, please.
Sure. Going to the community development, just, right off the bat, there are 3 expanded level items within the community development pages. A planner, GIS, and an office remodel. Next page. Outside of that, contractual increased with dues and subscriptions, and we budgeted additional money for property maintenance this year, which by and large is the mowing of tall grass. And then commodities, increase in fuel, some uniforms, safety equipment, which is a new line item this year. Previously it had been kind of taken out of other areas, so wanted to specifically identify those costs this year. And then it was offset by a decrease in books and publications, which has a lot to do with the treatment of the Daily Herald publications for the public hearings and things of that nature. So, try and see if we could get through the normal pages of community development. So, page 54, see if there's any questions on 54 before getting into the 3 green sheets. Try to clear the
Okay.
deck on
Yeah,
the
that-
basic stuff, and then
That'd be
get into
fine.
some-
Alderman E. Wesley?
Okay, my question is, maybe everyone think this for office equipment, we go from projected 500 to 13,000. Okay, is that because, got to do with the new personnel we're adding in here, down the line?
Mr. Wilson?
Sure. Yeah, so the 13,000 is inclusive of the 12,000 that's on the green sheet for the office remodel for the Community Development Department. Absent that expended level item sheet, it would be at the $1,000 level.
Okay, and I have one question before we move to the green sheets. Books and publications, 2015, we spent 4,845. We budgeted 1,000 for 2016, we're gonna spend 5,000, and now we're dropping it down to 500. If you could please explain that.
Updated code books,
Sure.
they change it to.
Yes, so there's a little bit of that, you know, the new books for codes, but largely, we're changing the methodology on the treatment of the notices in the Daily Herald. So like when there's like a variance or some public hearing, they do have to pay for that, which is effectively a pass-through, but the matching methodology, accounting methodology of that wasn't quite there, so we're changing the way we do that to reflect that. And then we're also gonna change where some of the non-community development items are charged off to. Previously, community development just got the brunt of pretty much every Daily Herald publication, which isn't really the most appropriate treatment. So we're gonna allocate those costs to their actual cost centers, and then also run the offsetting costs that are paid by the developers, or petitioners, I should say, through there to minimize those costs.
Okay. No other questions, I think we move to the green sheets.
All right, so the first green sheet we have is the planner, which is on page 55 of the budget book. Just, you know, I know there's probably some questions on these 3 pages, but to the greatest extent possible, we'd like to try to get some consensus on each sheet, so that we're not, you know, one person's talking about green sheet 1, 2, or 3, try to do them in a vacuum to the greatest extent possible, although I realize that it might not always work that way, but we'll try.
Okay, Alderman E. Wesley?
All right, the planner, I have no problem. I just think, my opinion, I think this planner price is too low for salary. I really do.
Give them a raise.
No, I really do. I don't think this is going to be I think this is going to be like a person that's not experienced as much in, you know, planning. I rather bump that, and we'll get to page 2 down the line here. But I don't know what the planner, I mean, according to the way I understand, when I talk to Ed, the planner is going to be under the leadership and guidance from the 2 people down there. And I just think if, once everything pops out, that we might not have a good experienced person in that position, even though they are overseeing them, while that drops the overseeing of their projects that they're working on. So maybe I'm wrong on this planner, but I think this planner price might be too low, because I know what's going to happen. We're going to put this job bid out, or whatever we do, to get our job, and then we're going to come back here and say, well, you know what, no one took this job, so we're going to have to come back and up it another 10 Gs. Because that's exactly what happened here before, that we had increased the salary on a personnel to get a personnel here, because it came in too low and no one applications didn't come in. So then staff went ahead and raised it.
I'll let Alderman Art Woods ask his question, and then we'll let Brad or Mr. Murmas
Part of
respond.
it, it's a statement. It is an entry-level planner 1, I believe. And I'm assuming that the director and assistant director and the city manager have discussed this along with the HR person and determined that this is the person that they need. I understand what you're saying, and yeah, if you want a planner 3 for 90 grand, but I think we're gonna let's get somebody we can train and develop in our system and teach them what's going on here. I think we're
well,
gonna be good.
Mr. Murmas?
Just in layman's terms, Ken and Ellie have been around for a while. The thought is this person would be doing a lot of grunt work. I don't want to pay more than what's on there for grunt work. So if we can't get a person to do grunt work for that, then we can't. I'd be surprised if we can't, though, so.
Alderman E. Wesley?
So what you're telling me, all right, I'm good with that, but if you don't get the applications here and we don't get it, you ain't gonna come back here and say, by the way, we had upped the salary to get a person because no one put applications in, because we've been that route already with this. So that's the only drawback I have. You know? I mean, because that has happened here before, that
Right,
there
but
was no
we're-
application, they went ahead.
So under that theory, we're gonna start every job at $100,000.
I didn't say it.
Okay, well, let's,
Give them the directions to give it raised higher if it's possible.
okay. Alderman Messina has a question?
I do. Have we put any thought into maybe starting this as an internship? And then maybe that evolving into a paid position?
Mr. Wilson?
Give me a moment.
My thought is to
Yeah,
help
go ahead.
alleviate Alderman E. Wesley's concerns. This would give us ability to test drive a few people, right? Get an idea, get their feet wet. I mean, tons of people that want internships, and then we can choose from there who would be the best fit.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Sure, so I'll apologize if this sounds a little canned, but, well, it is.
We kind of guessed frequently
Ask
asked
questions
questions, so
on
we had,
these, so,
this was a guess.
yeah. And one of the questions was about having an intern do the work, so. There is actually an existing planning intern position in the system that's part-time. And the planning intern would usually be a student working on their undergraduate or graduate degree. And the perception is by the time the intern learned the codes, duties required for this position, they'll be graduating looking for full-time work. The training would have to start all over with each new intern. And then without any continuity and only part-time work, it would be harder to get them up to speed, little progress. So, bits and pieces, but, not full-fledged, as they wouldn't be here full-time. And then with the level of expertise and skills varying greatly between the interns and the duties that they would be able to handle, sometimes you get great interns, sometimes you get less than great interns. And so the perception is you want to get somebody that you already know has the qualifications to handle this position with everything that's going to theoretically be going on within the city, and then bring the intern along and try to have that person help out as needed underneath that.
Follow-up,
Yeah, just one last follow-up. I mean, can we farm out a few? And I know when I get interns, I don't get one, I get 6, and then I hire one.
Mr. Wilson?
I guess that would be somewhat of a change. I mean, we historically haven't operated that way. I know places that do, but historically, that hasn't been a course that the city's taken. Not to say that it couldn't, but just historically it hasn't.
Alderman Mike Sizmarsky?
Yeah, I for one am not for any of that. I'm for, like Alderman Wood said, it's an entry level. We should keep it as an entry level and look at it next year's budget. If it needs to be raised, we raise it. With the Elgin O'Hare moving along as it is, and they're gonna be going through the TIF district also, I think we should just go ahead and hire one person for this job at an entry level rate.
Okay, Mayor?
Yeah, basically, this guy's gonna be looking at, or girl, gonna be looking at Potter Street beautification, comprehensive plan RFP, voluntary annexation we have going on, dumpster enclosure we got going on. We're talking about cross-training, opportunities with code enforcement, business licenses, rental housing. This person's gonna be real busy, and having an intern, and then maybe, one intern, 2 intern, and trying to get somebody up to speed. I understand what you're saying, it's possible cost savings, but we need somebody who's gonna be here, and, I don't know, 50,000 sounds like a great starting job for somebody brand new, and they're gonna get raises.
These are college students.
Okay. Alderman Catalano?
Yeah, also, we can, hopefully they can move along with the rezoning the River Park. That'll be helpful.
Alderman E. Wesley, did you have a question?
Believe me, I'm in favor of giving the 50,000, but I just want the council to give the authorization if they have to, and get the approval now to increase it if they don't have any applications. Because that is done before. All I'm doing is, if they need to go out and get more money to hire one, let's give them the authorization now or something. Because they're going to do it regardless, our approval or not. They can do whatever they want because they did it once before. All I'm saying, I'm for this project.
So why do we go through the budget process then?
Well, that was the whole purpose. Then I'm going to come back and say, well, you went over this budget price.
I have faith that they'll get it done.
I guess there's no, we do have Alderman Sorrentino would like to ask a question.
You know, I think there could be a great compromise on what we're looking to do here by hiring someone and letting someone assist him in the form of an intern. You can get,
Guys, could you
Twice
let
the bang
Alderman
for your
Sorrentino
buck.
speak?
so I'm in favor as Alderman Sismarski, where we bring a man on board, but I also agree with Alderman Messina. We could have someone assist him as an intern at no cost to us and lift some of the bricks from his chest that are gonna fall on him immediately and free up Ed and Kellen from that department too. But it's certainly something to explore. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, Alderman Sorrentino's point, the planning intern position is currently posted, the intern position is currently posted, so we are kind of looking to move down that parallel path like that, so.
Mayor?
Yeah, we have 2 part-time positions in this department already. But when you guys are saying interns, are you saying that they're just interning for free, one of those free internships? I just want to make sure that that's, because the part-timers we have now, we're paying them, and I know we tried to get an intern for IT for what, 2 years? And we, you know, a free intern, we got nobody, right? Is
I'll
that-
find you guys one. If you need one, I'll find. So,
Right? I'm understanding it's 2 part-timers, we have them already, but they're paid positions, but I think they're looking for not paid positions, right? Is that what, I mean, that would be great if we can do it, but.
Mr. Murmas?
Every year this comes up, and we have some interns we get paid, some are not paid, some we get class credit for, some we don't. It really depends on the discipline of the intern that's working. So we've had many interns that did not get paid. We've had interns that get paid $10 an hour. It's like kind of a mix, so we're not set on one track. So there are some that do get paid. We try not to. We try to go like the class credit route or whatever, but in some instances, we end up paying, you know, $10 an hour. So it's a mixture. Over the past decade, it's been that way.
Alderman Messina?
like Alderman Sorrentino said, I think you're right. I know we have a need. I was trying to ease the blow and the idea of not having to throw someone in the position and then, oh God, they didn't work out and we have to change them. I love his plan. I think as long as you're committed to having an intern specifically for that, if you need an intern, please come to me. I have hundreds of kids that are looking for an internship. I promise you, they will have an intern. And I can give you some urban planning folks that would love to intern. But to your point, I think we need the position, and I think he's got the best idea up here thus far.
I think we'll get a consensus if we want to do this position. Do we need to make a motion on this?
No,
Okay,
just direction is fine.
okay. All in favor of hiring the person for 50,000? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we give direction. Next screen page.
Sure, so, moving on, the next one is the GIS analyst. This position came up during the strategic planning session that we had on the Saturday morning a few months ago. There's a lot of, data on here. Like I said, it came up during strategic planning. We went through, found, towns in the area that had it, did a quick salary survey on this, which is where the budget amount came from. As you can see in the book, it's obviously salary, FICA, IMRF, and an estimate on healthcare. Again, we do have a number of, prepared answers for potential questions, so at this time, look forward to fielding those questions.
Okay, one question I have is, I just want to make sure, I mean, I'm all for this, but we are going to be able to keep this person busy. I don't want this person being pulled off onto other things and not the GIS. Is that the case? Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the intention. staff went through and identified some of the first few things that they would have this person do, and there's 17 different tasks on the list of things that that staff feels that need to get updated, immediately or in short order.
Okay. Alderman E. Wesley?
All right, GIS, I did ask what towns have it. I'm still waiting for that list.
Mr. Wilson?
I
Aye.
did talk about that. Second of all, some of the stuff is already GIS. And what is the breakdown to contract it out versus hiring someone? Second of all, you're adding another personnel down to the building department for office space, and then you got a part-timer in here for seasonal. Adding 3 people to that division, which is pretty tight down in that office already. So those are the 3 questions that I'd like to know before I vote on this tonight.
Mr. Wilson, could you answer them?
Yeah, go a little bit out of order. So number 3, the office space one. The next green sheet is the office remodel for community development, which that's, somewhat dependent on these 2 green sheets. So if you're okay with it, we'll talk about that in a minute, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sure, okay. The first question you had about the towns that have GIS people, the ones that were surveyed that have GIS personnel, if I may, Schaumburg, Naperville, Grundy County, Hoffman Estates, Swansea, which is way south, Chicago, Lombard, Carroll Stream, Elmhurst, Wheaton, Downers Grove, Hoffman Estates, Arlington Heights, Glenview, and Addison has a person that does GIS but is technically a civil engineer. So those are the ones in the area. Okay, and Roselle also has their engineer, in-house engineer doing the GIS things. So those are the ones that, when we did a quick reconnaissance, were the communities that had full-time GIS people. I know when I was up north in Glenview, we had a GIS manager and then 2 techs. Granted, they had the whole Naval Air Base thing that was going on, but they had 3 people in their GIS department, so.
Those are 2 big towns, so I can see that.
Sure,
No
sure.
problem. And what's the salary for them?
It varies anywhere from, like the low 40s up into the 70s, 80s. So when we ran it through, we tried to find a decent midpoint, which is where we generally don't like to try to go over the midpoint, and the number that's presented in there, staff, in going through all the numbers, felt it was a reasonable high end to start. Obviously, we try not to pay at the high end, but that was the kind of the midpoint of the range that was developed.
Follow-up,
So,
Alderman E.
you
Wesley?
just made a statement here, if I get this right. You said the salary was between 40 and 70,000, correct?
I mean, there's one that's at 108, there's one that's at, 95.
But basically, where is it at?
So, if you, regress it down to your mean and norm, it's between 50 and 75.
So why are we offering 90,000?
Well, 90,000 's,
Mr. Wilson,
it's,
That's the base
All right.
salary he's talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm talking, but that's what benefits do for them?
no, the 50 to
He's talking about
75
the
is
base
just
salary.
just the base salary, yeah.
But again, go ahead, and then the third question I had.
Which was?
Which, what was the other question?
Oh, the
Alderman?
contract versus in-house. Really if you excuse me for a second, let me,
But someone's doing it right for us.
well,
Well,
yes and no. I mean, Baxter and Woodman, they're hosting the system, but, if you go through, we haven't spent a lot of money the last few years on actually updating the GIS system. I think it's been 2 or 3 years since we spent a significant amount of money to actually update and maintain the system. So right now, we're predominantly just paying Baxter and Woodman just to host the site and allow, the people here with the ArcView license to log into it.
right, but we already did, I'm sorry. We already did some of the work already. We already did the street lights, the water main's done, the trees are done, the signs are done. Those should be already done. So are we telling me that they're not done, that we paid for that to be done, and now you're telling me that isn't done? Or, yes?
Mr. Murmas?
See, that's the beauty of the position. they're never done. They could never be done. When you talk about the water mains being done, they're not done because then the water main gets updated on any given street. It all has to be drawn back in there. The age has to be revised. Any problems they find out in the field have to be marked for an individual address. So it literally is never done. And what you just said is exactly why we need the position, because the baseline could get done, but then it has to be updated continuously from now until the end of time. And each year, more and more stuff has to be added to the base maps.
But
So
what-
that's the big problem.
what
So
does-
nothing's ever done.
What does it cost outsourcing it? Give
If-
me the numbers.
If we outsourced this position, it would be 10, 20 times what it would cost to have the guy do it.
But we don't have the number here yet.
Okay,
That I
okay.
asked for.
$300,000, $400,000, $500,000 versus 65, that's what I'm saying.
Alderman Sizmarsky, you had a question?
My question was, what are we paying outsource? I know Maxwell was not told preferred it, so. But like you said, it's gonna cost us 10 times more, 20 times more to do it, to farm it out 100% to Baxter-Woodman or any other kind of outsourcing firm. And it's a continuous, it's an animal that just keeps growing, it never stops. So to have it in-house, I understand keeping it under our house.
Alderman Messina?
Couple things. I guess first question was was a different question, but you mentioned that we're outsourcing the Baxter Woodman to have access for them to host the site. So what are we doing? Are they paying for their license, and how is that working? How are they hosting a GIS site and we're paying them? I don't get that.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'll admit, that's not really my forte, so I'm going to defer to probably either Mr. Case or Mr. York on the hosting of the GIS system. I don't want to misspeak on that one.
CRIT Director, Mr. Case, he must have an answer.
Hosting, they're hosting the data on their servers, so the infrastructure is being hosted by them, and the second part of that is currently, if we have any updates, we have to then send them to them, and their GIS staff inputs it, consulting costs.
So they're a data warehouse. They're not the GIS hosting. They're just a data warehouse for us.
Essentially, they're hosting the GIS platform, they're hosting the ARC server, and they're hosting our data at the same time.
So we're theoretically outsourcing to them, theoretically just using one of their logins. We're basically using one of their licenses. They pay for it all, and then we're just basically paying for one of the licenses?
You could think of it like that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I follow?
Yeah, continue.
I'm good. There's a ton of value. I don't think one thing you guys mentioned that I think is huge, and I see it in every city, is the idea of data silos. You guys mentioned it here, and I think it's critical, is this idea that right now, data sits everywhere, independently. Nobody talks to each other, as a generalization, right? So imagine this perfect world. Believe me, I think initially, when this person starts, they're gonna have tons of work because they're gonna be inputting so much stuff. Think about now, when we say, well, how old is that water main? When we talked about Murray, right? You had to dig it up, you had to find it. But what if we had all that data right there and we could plan? We could probably plan 20 years ahead. So there is value. There's a huge value. I think initially they will be very, very busy. I will worry down the road when it's more of a maintaining thing. But my question is to really make sure they have enough on their plate if they don't already. Most times I see it bridged over to a crime analyst. And that crime analyst is the one doing the GIS. Have we thought about that? Will that be part of this?
Good, anyway. Mr. Murmas, do you have an answer?
Well, when we talked about this internally, we obviously take all new positions seriously. We talked about a use for this person in every department, including the PD.
It would be
So
PD,
at
cool.
first we started, okay, it's obviously Public Works and Building. But then we're like, not only that, like you said, there'll be instances where PD is gonna be using it as well. I mean, I don't know
'Cause that's a
how they
full-time
would use
job
it initially,
itself.
but we talked about PD would definitely be using it.
Okay.
So every department would be using it.
So, yeah, that alone is a job. So if he's doing everything and PD, I mean, okay, I'm good with it.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to keep things in perspective here, I've noticed that when we talked about the planner, we used the figure of 50,000. When we used the GIS position, we used the gross of 90,000. When it's 65,000.
60, he made a mistake when he said that.
Well, then, we're looking at 72 versus 90 for the two positions, not 50 and 65. We look at the gross. That's all I wanted to say.
Correct. Alderman E. Wesley, you have another question?
You're absolutely right, but whenever you hire a position, and the way I look at it, you look at the whole entire insurance and all that. You look at it all. Yeah, you're offering 65, but now let's throw those benefits in there, RMF and all the other stuff. That still comes out to 90 Gs, how you look at it.
Oh,
So
I agree.
don't saying that, yeah, we hire him for 65, add all that stuff in, it's coming out to $90,000 regardless.
Peter?
But everyone says it's starting at 65, but yeah,
Well-
but add the benefits, it's 90 Gs.
Okay, well, the total cost is, Alderman Messina.
Oddly enough, I actually agree with Mike in that respect, in that we are. I mean, what we're paying Baxter Woodman, 2 or 3 projects, we're gonna make that money back without a problem. I know, I get it, it's a lot to swallow, but 1 or 2 projects, that person's already paid for themselves. It's just gonna be on you guys to make sure they keep busy. And if you just give them the PD stuff, I guarantee you that alone should keep them plenty busy. But it's good to see the silos and everybody talking. You think about an idea of like a pothole. If Matt has a pothole or something's reported, and we can see that stuff, and then that gets over to PD that says this is an accident or a collision waiting to happen, all of a sudden everybody's talking, and we know that we've patched that. All these people start talking. That's the value.
Alderman E. Wesley.
If
give-
he's gonna work in all these departments, how come his salary is not balanced out throughout all the departments? Why is one department taking a major hit of $200,000 added to their budget? If you're going to do that, we did it with the Prairie Fest seasonal, we split those out. So if he's going to do that, this payroll should come out each division.
Mr. Mur-
Because you've got one department that's taking a major
One,
hit.
nobody's taking a major
Mr.
hit.
Murmas.
What you're talking about for Prairie Fest would be different because it's tourism fund, so it's a different fund. So when it's talking general fund, nobody's taking a major hit because the community development staff, police staff, public works, street staff, things like that, that's all taken out of the same fund. So I suppose theoretically, if they want to take some out of water for GIS, they could do that. But community development and admin's the same amount, same thing.
Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, and we did have that conversation a little bit internally, and the predominantly reason that we did it this way, just in one department, was since we knew there was gonna be one sheet, to try to make it easier to, at least to conceptualize what the numbers were gonna be. We didn't wanna put on here 6 different departments and then try and debate or argue that, well, 5% should be admin, 20% should be this department, 50% should be this department. So, I mean, certainly, since it is going to be interdepartmental, use, I mean, we could, split it up between them all. We could put the position in admin, as admin, generally supports all of the rest of the operating departments. Since that's where the person theoretically is going to have their office, that's why we put it in there. But you are certainly correct that we could parse that out if the direction was to do so.
Okay. We're gonna start limiting the questions here. We'll get one more question, and then I have a follow-up, and then we're gonna, Mr. Wood, the Alderman.
I think the intent was to have this in community development more, although the spillover could go to the police department. I don't want to start rating and not get the system complete. We sat back for 3 years and haven't done anything. And that system's very dynamic. Our system is not. It's very static. I mean, we're 3 years behind putting stuff in on top of the other layers that we're missing. And if there's free time, I don't care, but let's not kid ourselves that he's gonna have enough time to be at the police department, 25 hours a week. So I don't want everybody to start rating the guy before we get him going, and then we don't complete the mission critical thing, especially with the toll ban stuff. First 2 years.
Exactly.
He'll be-
The one thing, Mr. Wilson, if you could just, for the public watching, I mean, this GIS, the analyst, I mean, that really means nothing. Could you just give a quick, I mean, actually, there's 2 sentences in the screen sheet that tells you exactly what GIS is about. Again, I don't think the public really knows exactly what GIS system analyst is.
Yeah, I'm gonna defer that one so I don't misspeak again. I don't know, Mr. York or Mr. Case, I don't know if you guys want to take it. I mean, I know conceptually what it is, but if you're looking for something for public consumption, I'd rather have somebody a little more SME speak on that than myself.
Again, it's in the green, I mean, it's spelled out on the green sheet, but just so the public knows what we're talking about, because I don't know if the public would really know.
I can probably speak on what community development would use GIS for. GIS analyst, geographic information system is the full title. Essentially, what I've used it in the past for is putting in data. Zoning maps are a good example. We have printed zoning maps downstairs. That data has to go in somewhere, has to be printed out. If you do it in-house, obviously it's labor intensive, but there are some savings if you do it outside with a consultant. Obviously, it's still labor intensive, but you're paying for someone's time. So there's a cost benefit to doing this in-house. This position, this individual would be extremely busy, certainly just on community development projects alone. I know there's a lot of opportunities to do work with the police department and public works. I think there's substantial savings, and I think one of the key things that community development would use such an individual for would be, we get a number of calls from developers looking for various site details, site history. Right now, I know what I'm doing, which I'm going to DuPage County's website, which is very good, and I'm going to their GIS site. A lot of the data that we use and we would use does come from DuPage County. We have an agreement with them. It would be it's something we could publish on our website. There's a lot, and I know some of you know this in great detail, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data you can use. But I just see, just to sum up very quickly, if someone's asking you questions about property, size, dimensions, history, recaptures, first thing I do in the morning, if I have that system in some of my other positions, and I know Kelly does the same, you open the window, someone calls you up, you have all the answers. You're very dynamic. Other communities have this system. Other communities I've worked in have this system. You can answer those questions right there and then. Right now, what happens is someone calls, we take the information, we have to get back to them. Sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes 2 days. We're not as efficient as we want to be, and we're competing against other communities. So, sorry, a long-winded answer, but it makes our department more efficient, and I believe that's the same thing that would happen in some of the things that we've discussed with the police department, also public works, and I know there are some uses for finance and administration, so.
Okay, great overview. Again, I just want the public to know what this is. Let's get a consensus on this. Is everyone for this? Do we have anybody opposed to this? Okay, I guess you have your consensus. That's a yes. We could continue.
All right.
Yeah, the third green page, if you,
Okay, so move on to the third green page. In the narrative for this, it does say that if the GIS analyst and/or planner position was created, there would need to reorganize the space down in the community development department. They're a little bit, what you would call tight as it is right now. So this is a pretty rudimentary remodel that's presented before you. And so, yeah, they need to do something down there to accommodate these positions downstairs.
I think our mayor has a question.
Simple statement, if we approve the first two guys, we need the $12,000. Do we need the description of carpeting and office space? Can we just, maybe yes?
I think this is a yes. Let's continue.
Sorry, Brett, I don't need to talk about carpet.
Right, moving on to the finance department, the increase in personnel, the accountant position was upgraded to the accounting manager position. And then there was also a slight increase in overtime in the finance department over the last year or so, and then going forward. Absent that, as you can see on the screen there, every other subcategory, even by $20, shows a decrease. So the only increases in personnel, everything else is down to some degree.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the finance section? Okay, I hear none. Let's move on.
Legal, you know, this one kind of pretty much speaks for itself. We do have, you know, obviously, you know, general legal counsel that you all know. We have labor attorney, and then we have the cost for the adjudication, the in-house adjudication that the police department runs. And all three of those are ran through this department.
Any questions on this? Okay, with none, let's continue.
Police department, again, the personnel, you know, with the telecommunicators, the in-house dispatch center going away, that's the lion's share of that decrease. Also some attrition, some retirements, and then filling in at significantly lower salaries. You know, that elimination, though, did lead to the lion's share of that contractual increase, paying the fees for the new dispatch center. Commodities were down due to the lower fuel costs, which have seemed to have been hanging around for a while. And then other was due to decrease in the accreditation costs. Part of that accreditation, the patrol side was accredited as well as the dispatch center, but obviously without a dispatch center, nothing to accreditate. And then also rolled through there was, again, the reduction in the TraxGuard administration costs. We reduced that number by 50%, assuming that only 6 months would be spent in this current budget year.
Okay, I have a couple quick questions. Seasonal employment, we budgeted 12,000 in 2016, only spent 7,500, and now we're asking for 11,500. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, that's largely the crossing guards, and you know, I don't specifically remember this past summer, but a couple different things. You know, if you have a lot of newer people, they're at close to the bottom of the pay range, where returning people are near the higher of the range. And also, if you have, you know, bad weather, you know, a lot more rain days, things of that nature, then they're not going to be out there, you know, because it's for the pool at Commercial and Wooddale Road. So if the pool's closed, there's no need to have the crossing guards out there. So there'll be a couple different factors in there.
Okay. The next one, actually, I don't have any more on this. Alderman E. Wesley?
Actually, also, the reason why I think the seasonal crossing guard was increased is because I think they also were using for Prairie Fest crossing too, so they should be compensated for that. Okay, and then I have two questions. The office equipment for $2,000 and maintenance for other equipment. What are we buying this year for the police department for office equipment? And then the other equipment maintenance. Is that copiers? What's that for? Because that went up.
Mr. Wilson, could you answer that? Or?
I'm not sure what the police department's purchasing, so I'd defer to the chief on that one.
Chief Vesta?
You're talking the maintenance of equipment, right?
I'm talking maintenance of other equipment.
Right.
And I'm also talking office equipment. And then I have another one for dues and subscriptions went up.
So, some of the maintenance of office equipment, obviously, fax machine is what we had go down the last year, other things around the station. Other equipment include our radar. All of our radar guns in the cars need to be calibrated every year, so an outside company does that. Our breathalyzer, our portable breathalyzer machines need to be repaired. Maintenance of those kinds of things, that's all it is just keeping equipment in good working order and being certified too.
Okay, and then the other thing is education and training. Is that, we increase that because we promoted a sergeant, he's going a couple more classes, or what? You're at 20, projected was 26.5 and proposed is now 29.
Chief Vesta?
Thank you. Yeah, with a new sergeant, we do send all of our new supervisors to supervision school, which is important. So that'll be a part of it. Also, what comes out of there is police academy when we hire a new officer. That's $3,000 apiece. Some other costs that we have out there are, we do monthly training for every officer, every sworn officer, and that's all new law updates and constitutional stuff. We pay for that. In addition, we're a member of NEMR. That costs about $105 per officer, and that gives us unlimited classes with NEMR, which is the mobile regional training. So it's a lot of ongoing and recertification trainings that we have. You know, we anticipate, usually every year we have at least one police academy that we send someone to, just with the normal turnover of people. We're trying to hire one right now to go into the academy that starts the end of March. But just through attrition, occasionally, you know, I don't think we go many years without having at least one person go through a police academy. Sometimes we go 2 years, so.
Alderman E. Wesley, you're okay?
I'm done.
Mayor, you had a question?
Real quick, since we're talking about maintenance, I did speak to Brad this week. I know you couldn't whip it together in 2 days, but maintenance agreements, we have maintenance agreements on HVAC, copiers, and whatever. I asked you to make us a list of all these agreements, how much they are, just like we have the vehicles or whatnot. Some of these things like HVAC, for instance, how old is the equipment, the age of the equipment, and when are they set to be replaced? Just so we can see, maybe some of these contracts might not be worth having next year or the year after, I don't know, you know. So,
Mr. Wilson, any comment?
Yeah,
no, I
it's,
just told him about it 2 days ago, he's not gonna have them now.
well, it's a work in progress. You know, Mr. Walczek here can attest. I think we made some pretty good inroads in the day and a half that we've been working on it. So we just, you know, through the list of bills and GL runs and stuff like that, we have a pretty good idea of what they are. So there's a couple of different stages. One's identifying who the vendor is, and then, you know, getting a hold of the contract, and then running through the particulars of that. So it's work in progress. It's work in progress, but
No problem. I just want to bring it out there that,
yeah, it was actually started a couple years ago by the previous contracts manager. So we were just kind of picking up where he had left off on it. So
okay.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, one question, one side mark. Wasn't Jeremy working on that, compiling all that stuff? Don't we have that started somewhere? Don't have to answer.
That's,
But that's it.
That's what he just said,
It never
yes.
came up.
well, yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah, we
Right.
picked up where he
Okay, so-
left off, which is
My question, more for probably the police chief. So when I'm looking at the police department, we're losing 6 personnel, but effectively the number of the budget is only $40,000 difference. I thought that there was gonna be a bigger difference when we went through the whole move.
Chief Vesta?
Yeah, I actually think the total cost savings is gonna be right in about the $250,000 range. So we had a significant decrease in salaries. And then in this proposed budget, you've also got increases for current employees that we still have. So although salaries are going down, if no one got a raise, they would go down even further. Some of the things that aren't included in that, though, is over $100,000 in health insurance costs that we've saved that don't come, you don't see the savings in the police department budget, but you'll see it in central services. So maintenance for the radio room, all that stuff that we were buying uniforms for the people, I still think it's close to about $250,000 a year we are saving by outsourcing dispatching.
So just if I can recap, so the savings really is not shown because we would be showing an increase.
Oh, definitely.
Right, that's what you're, okay.
Yes.
All right, makes sense.
And I have one question while Chief Vesta's up there. Ammunition gun range, we spent $4,400, we bumped it up to $6,200, not knowing the price of ammunition. Is it just the price of ammunition going up, or why they increased?
Yeah, and actually, looking back, I don't think we've increased that budget in many years. In the last 5 years, the waiting times and the price of ammunition has gone up significantly. We've also added we do a lot more simunitions training now, which is marking cartridge, expendable cartridges, where our people actually use force-on-force training, where we can more readily simulate, you're not just rubber guns that you're pointing at each other, where we do training inside of the schools, we do training at the station. We do trainings on the weekends up at the industrial park with some of this stuff that, so the costs have gone up significantly, but we haven't increased the budget in quite a while, so we thought it was a good time to do it now.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? With none being heard, we can move on to the next section.
The Board of Police and Fire Commissioners, just across the board, this one's down. Largely, it's due to the fact that there's no mandatory test this year. I forget what the math is, but every so often you hit a cycle where there's no testing requirements, and the flip side is you hit one where both tests are required. So this happened to be one of the years where no testing was required.
Any questions? Let's move on.
Public Works Administration. There is one expanded level item in the Public Works Administration Department for the AVL, or, street name of GPS for certain vehicles, which we'll get to in a minute. Increase in commodities is mostly the uniform costs. We did go back and expand our budget sheets a few years, and the number that's in there now is more consistent with like the 5-year spend on that, instead of the number that was in the previous year's budgets. And then other slight increase in the conferences and meetings line item. That's really the exciting points of that one.
Before we move into the green sheet, one question I have is on uniforms. Seemed like we were kind of high, like 19,000, 18,000, then we only did 17,000. We're moving back up to 19,000. I'm just kind of curious, why it was so low this year compared to the other years.
Yeah, I think we've seen it start to come down the last few years and was optimistic, but especially with some of the new hires needing to get caught up on all their gear and everything, because it's in the union contract what they get, but not all the guys spend all their money every year. So, like I said, with the new hires and stuff, and expanding our spreadsheet back out, I think we go back to 05 or 06. It's a lot closer to what the historical number's been over the last 4 to 5 years. So.
Okay. I'll move to the green sheet. See if that.
Sure. And I'll say the IT manager reminded me that this is, going on the television. So whatever's on the screen is what people at home are seeing intermixed with the other camera angles. So.
Do we have any questions on this? Alderman Catalano.
Now, the cost is $4,400 a year. Is this just, how many years does that go out? Is it every year that we'll be paying that cost? An annual cost?
Mr. Barmes?
Yeah, the annual cost is $2,900. It's $40 for the first year
Right.
because of the startup cost. And if you remember last year, we talked about this, but it was more of an expansive program. We wanted to limit it because this was what we were really interested in, how it started out with snow operations to make sure, how fast the routes are going. Is there room for improvement in routes, things like that. That's why we pared it down for snow operations and got that number significantly lower.
So what it is $2,900 every year
Yeah,
for just for snow?
for snow operations, yeah.
Okay.
Alderman Catalano? Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Woods, I'm sorry.
I thought we were against this last time, so it's $3,000 to tractor trucks for 3 months, it's $1,000 a month. And what are we gonna tell them with the snow plowing? Somebody remind me.
Mr. Murmas?
Well, we were against it. The council wasn't necessarily against it last time. It was the absorbent costs last time, and a lot of comments were made. We need to bring this lower. Let's not get in this huge, robust program right off the bat because it's way too much money to spend on that as the way to pare it down. Some of the original things we were looking at when we were looking at GPS was to see if there's better efficiencies with the plow trucks, routes, things like that, how fast certain drivers are going. Is this guy, better on this route, or, I don't know, there's linking with the salt and salt usage, beet juice usage, things like that. So that's why we did only snowplow trucks.
And this isn't expandable at all, I think
Mr. Marvis?
Well, we can expand it to different vehicles, but the thought was from last year's discussion that the council wanted to, if anything, start slow because the budgeted item was so high at first. So this would be a way to see if this type of information would be useful. If it's not, we can just eliminate the program. If it is, we can expand it.
I don't see it.
Alderman Catalano?
So, say for instance, on a mild season, do we still pay the rate of 2,900, even if we don't use it?
Alderman Messina, did you have a question?
I was just gonna comment on it. I think it's important. I think that was part of my comment, was it was high. I think we should pilot it, and this will tell us if it's worth it or not, but, I mean, we're talking about all this data, we're talking about the GIS. If we don't do this, I mean, what's the point? We can't pick and choose. If we're gonna go all in, we'll go all in, but, I mean, this is very useful information that people wanna know about. I mean,
They want to know where the plow trucks are?
yeah, I'm like, yeah, they do. They do.
I-
Many do.
Question.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
mean,
said.
I mean, you look in the city, I don't know what's so funny, Mike. I mean, what,
I'm not
tell me
leaving my
what's
driveway
different?
till the plow
Okay.
What do
truck
you
comes.
see
Wait,
then?
one at a
Tell me
Okay,
what
one
you
at a
see.
time, please.
What do you see that's so different?
I haven't had one person call me and say,
Okay, your ward
Where's
is
the plow
different than our
truck?
ward. We've seen that, right?
You one at
So
a
it goes
time,
back
guys.
to.
it's always Ward 1.
Excuse me, Mike, one at a time here. Have a little respect for the other alderman here.
Can I go?
Yes, continue.
I think this is a good way to start, pilot. If there's no value, we're talking about $2,900 or $4,000, we scrap it the next year. I think if we're gonna go all in with the data, we go all in. If it's no value, we get rid of it.
Mayor?
Yeah, part of the problem with this whole project was Big Brother's watching, and, you know, you have to negotiate into the union contract like anything else. Honestly, I've probably had maybe over the years a dozen people complain to me that the plow truck did not go down their street, and when I call and ask, I was told, well, no, they'd ran the route 3 times. That's the only benefit to this. You're always gonna get those people, oh, the truck never came down my street. But again, it was a dozen people over, you know, what is it, 9 years now? So-
Well, one comment Alderman Messina did make, I mean, I do get those phone calls, and we actually had a street sweeper phone call, which we did find out, which they did have the GPS, that the street sweeper person is a contractor, and he was not telling the truth. It did not go down there, and that's the way we were able to tell. And I think for $4,000, I think it's well worth it, and it's not like we're spending $12,000, $15,000. I mean, if it's no good, we scrap it next year. Since there's so much controversy on this, I would say if I could have a roll call on this one.
Alderman Sizmarsky,
No.
Alderman Woods,
No.
Alderman Eugene Wesley. Yes. Alderman Sorrentino,
No.
Alderman Messina,
Yes.
Alderman Catalano,
No.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
4-3.
Thank you for your direction. Move on to the street division, please.
High level on the streets division, there's 2 expanded level items, or 3 actually, 2 under the commodities heading, 1 under the capital heading. The personnel, just a note on the personnel, the significant decrease was there was a very tenured employee who retired. The decent rate of pay being replaced at the bottom of the scale, so that's why there's a pretty significant decrease in salaries there. Obviously offset by other nominal union increases, but that's the reason for that decrease. Not getting rid of anybody, just retirement and replacement and that salary spread differential. Aside from that, like I said, by and large, the only increases in those line items then would be related to the expanded level items.
Okay, any questions? I do have a couple quick ones. The mosquito abatement, budgeted $65,000, we're spending $62,000, now we're dropping it to $50,000. Shouldn't we keep it roughly the same as to what we're spending at least? Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, defer to Mr. York on that. He's,
Yes, thank you. We've got a new contract with Clark Mosquito that will allow us to have multiple sprayings, up to 6 sprayings this year at the nominal cost. So that's why we kept it at $50,000. We actually got better rates than we normally have gotten in the past. So if we use more than 6 sprays, then the cost per spray goes up about 3 times what we're paying for the first 6 of them. So, but we should be able to maintain with the 6 sprays that we normally do. So this is probably more of an actual cost moving forward.
Okay, any more questions on this? Yeah, we can move to the green sheets.
Sure. The first green sheet is a utility locator. You know, the sheet, you know, goes through and tries to explain it pretty well. This would be to locate our underground lines. And I've had some conversations, you know, where, you know, if Julie comes out, they'll locate the ComEd facilities, but they won't locate the city's underground infrastructure. You know, short of that, dug in too far into the weeds, probably defer to questions at this point.
Mayor?
Yeah, so I take it, Matt, you're going to take this. So this is only for streetlights. My question becomes, and I asked Brad this, if something happens, our guys mark it incorrectly and something gets damaged or whatever, because do we take responsibility now? It's a legal question, I mean, or, you know, how does it work? I mean,
Mr. York?
Yes, the way that the underground rules work, that is, you mark the line, you have 18 inches on either side of the main point, so you basically have a 3-foot section where your line could be. If we mismark our line, then we're responsible. If we mark our line correctly and a person hits our line and it's within that 3-foot window, 18 inches on either side of the line that we mark, then they're responsible to fix it. That's why you want to use an actual locator and not just say, okay, I mean, normally a street light, if a street light's over there and a street light's here, odds are that the line goes between the 2 lines, and I mean, I can go out there with nothing and go out there and paint a line. But actually hooking it up to the locator and getting the electronic charges through there actually shows us where the line's at. So if you ever go out and see, sometimes you'll see a line and then you'll see like a dash marks on either side of it. Well, that's the 3-foot one, right? The 3-foot window that you have. So yes, we would be liable for it. But we're really liable for, we're really responsible for all of our underground utilities as far as
Mayor, follow-up?
so, and basically, how much have we been spending with Elman and Nelson per year?
Yeah.
Where,
Mr.
I
York?
went back and looked at 2015, that's the last full year that we have. We spent $22,267.25 on locating services. That's 155 streetlight locates. So of that, $11,458 was in labor. That's what we pay for them, plus their equipment charges, plus their supply charges. So obviously, our equipment is a sunk cost. We are already paying for it, whether or not it sits in the garage or it goes out on a job. So that was about $10,000. Supplies about $900. We figured we can do it for about $500 or $600 worth of supplies a year. And then the labor, $11,000. When we go out, and just so everybody understands kind of what goes on, we get a Julie locate comes in, it comes in through the computer system, comes in through an email. We can do one of 2 things. We either dispatch a person to go out and take a look at it to figure out if it's our lights, someone else's lights, what's going on over there. Or we have to open up the GIS, look at the GIS map and see what's going on. If we have to do the visual inspection, then we drive out there, look at it, come back to the shop, fax in an order to Elman and Nelson to do the work, call them up to make sure that they got the fax, You know, if it's not located, we gotta call them again and make sure that they go out and do the locate for us. If it's an emergency locate, we have to come in on overtime to do it, then we automatically pay our guys 2 hours per the union contract. So we're not gonna see a great cost expense, especially on the overtime side, because we're already really doing half the work anyway. And it's another way to get, in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about how we're taking work away from the unionized employees, street sweeping for one. This is a way to kind of take some stuff back in-house, probably save ourselves a pretty good handful of money. And also, it gives our guys another job that they can have some pride in, going out and making sure that these lights get located properly.
Okay. Alderman Sismarski?
You have utility locators, so how many of these gentlemen are gonna be, how many people in the department are gonna be trained, marked on the territory? All the items that need to be marked, and is the city accountable for any mistakes we make?
Mr. York?
Okay, for this one right here, this utility locator is just gonna be utilized for the streetlights. We already have a utility locator that locates our underground water and sanitary sewer and storm sewer. This would be a new job for our guys to do. So, this $7,500 is for the piece of equipment itself. All the guys will be trained on how to do it. So if they're on call, they have to come in and do it. Obviously, we'll have probably between 2 to 4 guys that are excellent at it, and the other 4 to 6 guys that are good at it. That's kind of, you normally have a couple guys that are really good at doing that kind of work. And we'll probably have a couple experts, and then a bunch of people that can do the work.
Okay, thank you, and I think you already answered the liability question before. Couple more questions one question I have real quick before I defer to the 2 other aldermen here, is this added work, I just want to make sure this isn't going to take away their time to do other things. I mean, I'm assuming this is minimal work that's going to be needed for this, correct?
Well, I mean, it depending on construction seasons, it could be 6 hours a day. But like I said before, a lot of times we'll come in the morning and there'll be a stack of 10, 15 locates. Well, they already have to spend probably 2, 3, 4 hours trying to figure out if they need to be called into Elman and Nelson or not. They have to go out and do field work. They have to look at the books. They have to look at what's going on in that area. Make sure that it hasn't been marked and it just for a retran. So, and when people get more and more used to this at the beginning of it, if this goes through, obviously Elman and Nelson isn't gonna fall off the table, on day one. We're gonna have to train our guys on how to use these pieces of equipment. So it may be 3-6 months before Elman and Nelson, we drop them off. But we're already spending time doing it. So we'll go out there, and once you get going to it, if I've got 2 guys that are really good at it, you can bang out 10 or 15 things in 3 hours. If you're not good at it, it may take you all day to do it. So we'll be able to absorb it, though, within the department.
I think Alderman Catalano, you had a question?
You answered that already, thanks.
Okay. Alderman Messina, you had a question?
Yeah, what's the lifespan of a unit?
About 10 years.
Okay.
Depending on, there could be some things that need to be rehabbed, connectors and stuff that will need to get fixed, but it's any piece of equipment hopefully we don't get a lemon to start with, and we have a lot of problems with it, but I would say probably between the 6 to 10 years, which, I mean, for a $7,500 piece of equipment, it's not too bad.
I think Alderman Woods?
The training, is that done by an outside source, and then do they get certified with that training?
Yeah, usually the person that we buy the piece of equipment from will do the training. We also have people from the water and sewer, or the water utilities division that does locating right now of sanitary sewers and storm sewers. So they'll be a good reference for us as well. We're gonna work on getting same type equipment, so hopefully we can have some expertise that we can draw upon within the streets division. But usually it's a contract, vendor training.
But is there an outside program? So I'm looking for consistency.
Mhm.
People are trained, so if something ever did happen, saying the department would say we were trained and not everybody was trained differently by different people.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure with that, because I know in the past, where I've worked in the, before, you have the good guy trains all the other guys, kind of a train-the-trainer in-house type of thing. I don't know if there's a external certification program. I'd be more than happy to look into that and see if we can get something like that, but it may be more of a, like, train-the-trainer.
Okay, I think we answered all the questions. Is everyone okay with this?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Okay, I think we have direction. Let's move to the next screen sheet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one, as you can see, is a de-icer poly tank. Not going to bore you with reading it. Bottom line is, it looks like we're trying to increase our utilization of other pretreatments, beet juice, salt brine, things of that nature. Again, defer to questions and.
Mayor?
Yeah, Matt, a couple of years ago, there was some grant money for this through the DuPage River, Salt Creek watershed and all that stuff. Have we looked into that? I mean, because pre-treating the salt, I believe it was like 20% savings on salt and whatnot, and makes sense.
Mr. York?
Yeah, right now, DuPage River Salt Creek Watershed does not have a grant program. We are positioning ourselves for a larger grant that we're working with DuPage River Salt Creek Watershed, along with the Illinois Tollway. Part of the Tollway's issue with the Elgin O'Hare Expressway is that they need to reduce their chlorides coming off of the 390 project. They're not extremely excited about doing that, so they're trying to get people within the watershed to reduce their chlorides. So we're working with the watershed group and their consultant to formulate some plans moving forward, so we can ask for kind of a bigger project moving forward. Since the Illinois Tollway Authority has not come up with their criteria for their grant program yet, we're still kind of in the dark, but we know that there's something going to be out there, and we're kind of positioning ourselves to take a big chunk of it instead of just taking a nibble and asking for the $10,000 for this up front. We think we can get something more substantial out of them in the future.
Mayor?
Yeah, Matt, I know this actually came up a couple of years ago before you were here, when this started. Is it a third of our trucks or half our trucks are equipped with the tanks and the rest still do not have it, correct? Is that still correct, or did we add a couple since then?
Mr. York?
No, we've actually had good success through the help of the board to be down to, I believe there's 2 trucks that are left that have the small saddle boxes on the back, the 80-gallon tanks, versus the rest of them that have the 240-gallon tanks. And then we've also had the 3 new 1-tons that we've purchased over the last 2 years that each have 120-gallon tanks on them. So having the additional tanks means that we need to have additional storage exterior of those tanks, so we can continually fill them up to utilize the beet juice during the snowfall removal process, and as well as doing the pretreatment. You may have noticed last week we were out and we did some pre-treatment of the streets, which allow us opportunities to let a little bit of the snow fall prior to us getting dispatched in from the police department. It allows us the opportunity to get a little bit of melt going on, and it doesn't, if we continually do that, we won't have the ice build up at the base of the roads moving forward. But only having the 6,000 gallons in-house sometimes hamstrings us a little bit. makes us have to buy, we spend a little bit more on the beet juice itself because we can't get a whole tanker. So we have to do a split tank with somebody else, which they always jack up the cost just a little bit on us. So this will give us an opportunity to always order the 8,000 gallons that we need to fill up both tanks. We can also pull stock out and put them on our trucks and leave them on the trucks to give us more exterior tank space as well.
I do have a question. Approximately how long do these tanks last once we, purchase it?
This is just basically a hard cast plastic tank. Even being outside, I don't know what the lifespan is, but I'm going to say it's probably in the 20s to 30 years.
Okay. Alderman E. Wesley?
Hi. In the narrator, you said it will bring down the cost of using salt. And you go back in your budget here. So last year you budgeted $20,000 for salt, projected another $20,000, proposal adding the beet juice for $30,000. So someone's got to explain why are we buying the same amount of salt if you're telling me in your narrator that it is going to drop the use of salt. And this year, we shouldn't be spending that much money on salt because we hardly used it this year. So why are we ordering the same amount of salt when you're saying if you put this beet juice in play, which we're talking about, why will we keep ordering the same amount of salt?
I think Mr. Wilson has answer to this.
Okay?
Sure. So you're talking on page 91, correct, in the MFT fund?
No, I'm talking on page 78. Snow and ice control.
Oh, sure. So that particular line item is for beet juice. The snow and ice control on page 78, that's the line item for beet juice. Ordinarily, we would roll that into the snow and ice control in the MFT funds. However, some of the beet juices that are newer, local roads is not approved for use in MFT funds yet. So actually, the increase of that beet juice number actually recognizes the fact that we're using more of it and, ties into the addition of this tank.
So where's the salt come under?
The motor fuel tax, yeah.
We'll get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought that was for.
Speak up, Brad. Could we?
I thought that was for.
Could you, I guess the two aldermen didn't hear you on that here.
dude, the whole answer on the?
No, just the salt. Where does it come out of?
Oh, the salt comes out of the motor fuel tax fund, which is a little bit further in. Yeah, but yeah, that snow and ice control line item within the streets department is for the beet juice itself.
Okay, I think that's all the questions on this. Is everyone in favor of this? Yes. Anybody opposed? Okay, I think we have the direction on that. Let's move to the next green page.
Sure. So this is for snowplow controls. Two of the existing trucks don't have, as modern, up-to-date controller equipment as the other vehicles do. I think looking at this, one of the questions that came up previously was, what are the lives on these two vehicles? They don't want to, spend this type of money and then get rid of the vehicle the next year. So 233 and 234 are actually out programmed in 24, 25-ish range, it looks like. So this isn't a thing where you're going to replace the controls this year and then, replace the whole truck next year. So there is going to be some longevity to these controls should this item get approved.
Mayor?
Regarding the controls on the other trucks have it because we purchased those trucks with it, or what's the deal?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I can defer to Mr. York for a little more details. My understanding is, yes, they're newer and they have the more modern control systems already built into them.
Right, that's what I figured.
Alderman Catalano?
Can these controls be transferred over to another truck, a newer truck? If we,
Mr. York?
These controls, as we purchase new trucks moving forward, we try to get the most state-of-the-art controlling systems that we have. These two trucks don't have, they have electronic controlling systems, but they don't have any way to spit out any information. So, whereas right now, on certain trucks that we have, I can tell you how much salt was put down, how much beet juice was put down. We can program it in that says this truck can only put down 300 tons per lane mile of salt, versus what an old dial system or a non-system like these trucks have will just put down whatever the operator tells it to. And we found that we were putting down about 600 tons per lane mile, and we should be putting down about 250 to 300 tons per lane mile. So on the ones that we can program, we've been able to program it in and lock it out that it can't go more than 300. So a guy can, on a light snow, he can put it at 150 or 200. But if he ramps it up, it's only gonna go to 300. It's kind of like if you're in the hospital and you got the morphine drip, you can keep hitting that button as much as you want, but you're only gonna get it every once in a while. It's the same thing with this one. And now with these new controls, I'll be able to pull out the information after each snowstorm and say, this truck put out this much salt, instead of, okay, it was 3 buckets of salt and 3 buckets is, 6 tons.
So in the long run, this is saving us money.
In the long run, it's giving us the opportunity to manage the program. If it saves us money or doesn't save us money, I guess can be argued, but it's giving us the opportunity to manage the program and to enforce the regulations that we have set up on the amount of snow, the amount of beet juice that is put out for each route during each individual snow event.
Alderman Messina?
So we can track the number of miles driven, we can track the number of salt that was used.
The amount of beet juice that is laid as well.
So for the people that were crying earlier about the GPS, this is just a little step below that, in essence, right? So we're not playing Big Brother by doing this, like people were crying about before?
Mr. Jordan?
We're knowing how much salt is put down. We don't know where that salt is put down. We know how much beet juice is being used. And then we know what the route is that they're on. So this is it's another management tool.
A good one.
And then what Alderman Messina said, I mean, I think that was the whole purpose of the AVL system too, was to help, just like this is trying to help, can save money, but, Mr. Mayor?
When did you say these trucks are being replaced?
It's 2024, 2025, I believe it was. So we still have about 8 to 9 good seasons worth of plowing off of these controls, the current controls.
Alderman Woods?
Now, are these controllers on those smaller trucks that you're saying only have 80 gallons tanks? Where are these being used? I'm just trying to get the bang for the buck. I'm okay with
No.
doing it, but.
No, these controllers are on the ones that have, see the saddle boxes or the behind cab boxes. So these are the ones with the larger tanks. But it also allows us to see how much salt is being laid.
Okay,
Which
good.
is the bigger bang.
Okay,
I'm all
any,
good. No crying.
hey,
We don't want our-
Alderman Woods, any more questions? Alderman Messina, did you have a question?
Last question. Can this be tied into the GIS? Yeah, right?
I would say yes. I'm not a GIS analyst, though, so I'll have to defer to that person when they're hired.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, Alderman E. Wesley?
You said these are also on small trucks already too? These devices on the small 150s? How much salt they lay? We
They're
have
on
smaller
this-
trucks that have salt
All the
spreaders too.
trucks that have salt have computerized systems right now. Even the 1 tons, not the pickup trucks, the 1 tons. No. The pickup trucks do not have spreaders. Anything that will have a spreader, we will be able to capture the right information.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Everyone in favor of this? Yes? Anybody opposed to this? Let's do a roll call on this one. Just, Tony, are you in favor of this, or?
Yes.
Okay, one opposition, so we're gonna go with this. Before we move on, our minute taker was gonna take a break here for 10 minutes, and then we will continue. If that's okay with everybody, yeah? All the same people are here. We're gonna move on to the next tab, the vehicle maintenance. Mayor?
I got a question on the pink sheet.
Well,
Well, we're on that.
let him go through his slide first.
Okay, go ahead. Do your slide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mayor. Vehicle maintenance garage, not a lot of significant items in here aside from the one expanded level item that wound up on the red/pink sheet. Otherwise, capital was down by half due to capital equipment. The garage fields are pretty well up to date on their equipment right now. So really, the only thing of much significance is the pink sheet in this department, unless, of course, there's other questions that come about.
Okay, any questions, Mayor?
Yeah, regarding the pink sheets, I mean, okay, this is regarding radios and whatnot for the guys to communicate. So the system we have is becoming obsolete, and so what happens when the radios aren't working and these guys just using their personal cell phones? I mean, if we gotta call a guy out on the street, how do we get a hold of him? We're gonna drive over there and ask, call him?
Mr. Mervis?
Well, typically, from my understanding, the crew leaders all have cell phones, correct?
City
Crew
phones?
Yeah, city cell phones.
Okay.
Crew leaders have city cell phones. They get their job tasks at the beginning of the day. They come in, they would check in. I thought it was wasteful to have radios in all the trucks when the crew leaders have cell phones, plus the radios were installed obviously at a time when cell phones weren't really, the thing yet. So the thought may be more if there is a communication problem, maybe have some sort of proactive phone system instead of a radio system, give every other guy a phone or something for like $10. I mean, it makes more sense than continuing an old antiquated phone system. That was my thought. Plus, I felt compelled to do at least one red sheet.
Mayor, follow-up?
Yeah, and I don't have a problem, saving money is great. I just want to make sure we can get a hold of the guys, so every crew, there's a crew chief and he's got the phone.
The crew leaders all have cell phones.
Well, I just want to make sure, that, we got to get a hold of Frank and, he's all the way at the other end of town, we're going to drive over there to get him, or are we going to call a cell phone, which I think might open us up to, I don't know, liabilities.
Any follow-up on that, Mr. Mervis?
So, okay, so we do have some form of communication. I just want to make sure we got,
Okay.
yeah.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yeah, I know it's not funded or not recommended, but I've talked to numerous public works people that said that they haven't used their radios in over a year. They've been sitting on a dashboard, so I understand why you say no to this. But I'd rather go see you put money towards a phone allowance or something.
At some point.
I had one question here. The IMRF expense, I went through this with Mr. Wilson. That number should actually be 17,900. Is that correct, when you and I looked at it?
Correct.
Page 84, the IMRF expense, it should be 17,900. Alderman Woods?
My question was, back on the radios, who wanted those? Obviously, somebody put those forward, and it says high importance.
Mr.
What's
Mermis?
the other side of the story?
I wouldn't say that's necessarily priority high importance. A lot of this stuff is templates. I encourage the department heads to just submit all the ideas they have as potential new ideas or for things that are broken. So I would hate for any of the department heads to feel as though they're gonna get, yelled at tonight or anything for submitting ideas. I just didn't think it was a good idea. So if the council thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea, that's up to you. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a high priority, though.
Mr. York, did you want to add anything? Okay. Alderman Wesley?
Page 87. Let's go back to that page. 87.
We're not there yet.
Back the other way.
I'm sorry, I'll wait. Go ahead. Go ahead, I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead then.
Okay. With no other questions, let's move on to the next section.
Interesting issue.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is central services, so the vast majority of the items in this particular department are costs or expenses that aren't otherwise easily classified to one department, such as the maintenance of this building, some certain HR things, interfund transfers, health insurance. So it's things that generally span the entire breadth of the general fund. And it's kind of the catch basin for all of the things that are non-departmental in nature. Decrease in capital outlay, reduction of the telephone alarm line system that we've been working on with the IT manager with the new phone system. That was part and parcel with the dispatch center, so there's another cost savings there related to the dispatch center. Health insurance did go up a little bit, but that's driven more based upon just the returns on the health insurance, nothing more than that. Then audit and professional services. Professional services is largely payroll services, and the audit is, the audit, the fiscal audit. We mentioned this a couple times, the reduction in the interfund transfer to the SURF fund, and that'll continue to go down and level off in future years. And then the increase in other, as Alderman Wesley had mentioned a couple hours ago, is the police pension contribution did go up a little bit, so that number is in the other section on page 87.
Okay, do we have any questions? Alderman E. Wesley?
So the police pension is projected 550? Is that the CERF?
The CERF is the sinking fund for the vehicles?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So the pension fund is, sorry guys. So what will that pension fund, what will that put us at for a percentage? Are we in the range that they recommend being at? That the state recommend, or, because I don't want to be shortfall on pensions.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I might defer to the chief for another comment. One of the, there's 3 or 4 different numbers out there for what we're actually funded at, depending on which report you look at.
What report are we going by, though? I don't care about any other report. Which one?
Sure. I can get you the number from our actuarial report. And like I said, that number changes every year based on retirements, payouts, et cetera. The one thing that the state has really been trying to clamp down on, and has actually gotten slightly draconian where they would withhold our money and give it, is if you're not funding their actuarial request, which we're doing. So as far as that goes, we're compliant. I can get you the number out of the latest actuarial report, then defer to the chief for other comments.
Okay, where would this put us at?
I don't know the exact percentage. Like I said, there are a number of formulas, there's actuarials. What the state law that passed in 2011 that created Tier 2, which all of our new employees now hired, benefits are much lower. But that also required that by 2040, which is just, 24 years from now, every single pension fund has to be 90% funded. So the actuarial every year on April 30th looks at how much money is in the fund, what are salaries going to go up, what's going to be the future obligations of the pension fund based on mortality tables, legitimate when people are dying. And then so they take that, and so next year it'll be basically, it's gonna project that within 24 years, you have to have 90% funded at this level. And it's kind of like, they give you a mortgage every year of what you have to pay. Kind of like when you're, what you call it, the escrow fund for your property taxes and insurance for your house, it changes every year. That, there's an actuarial that determines every year what the contribution of the city should be. The city has met that contribution every single year. And so then next year, it'll be down to 23 years, and they'll say, based upon what we project, this year you should provide this much. So they're following the state law. The council's been very generous to fund exactly what the pension fund, which is a separate body, has asked for every time. I'm not on the pension fund anymore, but that's the best answer I can give as to they are following the recommendations.
I just don't want to be a shortfall of funds, regardless, I just don't. Can I continue, I got another question? Or-
Yeah, you could continue.
The maintenance on building for $95,000, how long is that contract for?
Mr. Wilson?
Maintenance building, 95,000.
9,500.
Yeah,
Maintenance
Oh,
building.
you're up at the top,
Says the
okay.
Yeah.
I was looking.
Janitor service contract, how long is that contract?
sure. So that one,
And is that for both buildings and the train station, or separate?
I have to get back to you on the expiration date. It does not include the one for the train station, though. That I know. I'll have to get back to you on the date, though, for the,
So when's this one expire?
this, I'll have to get that for you.
Okay.
Alderman Wesley, got two of mine. What's the, O'Hare Noise Subcommittee, where we put that? Who we paying that to? I mean, is there directly anybody there or not? Are we paying funds out to? We went from 0 to 49 to 3,000 projected for this year.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to back up for 1 second. That maintenance of buildings, I mean, that's, the janitorial service contract is a significant portion of that. That's not 100% what's in there. So we'll get you a breakdown, though, and get you that date on that. I'm just saying, there's a couple other things that roll through that particular line item, so we'll get to that. And I do apologize, which specific line item were you looking at, Alderman?
Mine was part of it is maintenance, the O'Hare Noise Subcommittee. Put $3,000 in there, projected at 1,200.
I could probably answer that. I'm the chairman of the subcommittee. That goes for printing and things, for the event that we had at the junior high.
The FAA.
And the FAA meeting. So we use that for question for the citizens to be able to print and
Community
get
outreach.
community outreach. Mayor? Well,
Mike.
anything else, Alderman Sismarski?
Going back to the pensions, Chief, before they changed when they changed the tables, weren't they figuring like 8% rate of return, and now they've dropped it down, and, correct?
Chief Festa?
That's correct, yeah, they were assuming an 8% return, now I think they're down at 6 3/4%. A couple years ago, the pension fund had a really good year, and actually the city's contribution based on the actuarial study, which is done by an outside firm, not by the
Right.
pension board, the contribution went down, and then it went up last year, and now this year the increase is, they had a decent year ending April 30th of May 15. So the increase is much smaller than it was the year before. So it's kind of a moving number each year, but yeah, the assumed rate of return, a 1.25% every year on over $20 million in that fund can make a big difference. So if you assume large returns and you don't meet those, you're not going to be as well funded as if you, say, be a little bit more realistic with your, how much you're going to make.
Follow up, Mayor?
And weren't they like adding years or something? It went from 30 to 40 years, or, isn't that? There's been so much discussion on this because they're talking, depending who you talk to, we might think we're 90% funded, but you look at the other method they're using and we're at 70% funded. So it's a lot of numbers, but we just go by the study, of course.
Chief Festa?
That's correct. And the state law that passed, and I think it was 2011, but requires all pension funds to be 90% funded by 2040. So really, that seemed, ways away. Now it's only 24 years away here. So the city each year has reevaluated where they're at by the actuarial, and then they say for the city to meet their obligation from now until pretty much the existence of the fund, we're requesting this amount.
Of course, the state's not gonna meet theirs.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, and as Chief was mentioning, the rate of returns, things like that for the pension fund, between 15 and 16, that jump of $140,000 in there, the pension fund actually lowered their assumptive rate of return to bring it in line with recent stock market portfolio activity, as well as modernizing their mortality tables. So that led to the bulk of that was a changing of the assumptive rate of return and the change in mortality tables, which actually was more reflective of the current life cycle of an officer before they had them dying much sooner. So the new mortality table took them out longer, which obviously extended the life of the benefits, which further contributed to that increase that year.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We can move on to the next tab.
Sure. So that takes us out of the general fund. We're now into the special revenue fund section. The first one's road and bridge. The very bottom line, the interfund, that was a transfer to SURF last year, 100% to funding of the last new plow truck that was on the replacement cycle. So that's why that went down to zero. The contractual increase this year, along with the entryway signs or whatever, the Public Works Department is going to take a more aggressive approach to roadway sign replacement. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's like the speed limit signs, yield, slow children, things of that nature. I believe that's different from the name signs. The name signs, like, the name of the street signs, but all the other roadway signage.
Alderman E. Wesley?
Two questions. Traffic sign, so it was this one here, control. So we projected as 20,000, you went up $50,000? $30,000 increase? To make the signs with the how we get traffic signs up to $30,000?
I think Mr. York has an answer for that.
Are we replacing every sign in the city?
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is, a lot of the signs that we had, the regulatory signs, we're not talking street name signs, we're not talking decorative signs, we're talking parking signs, speed limit signs, stop signs. A lot of those don't meet regulations. They're different sizes. We have a whole bunch of hodgepodge of signs throughout town. So what we're trying to do is come up with standards that are based upon the MUTCD code and putting the right signs up where they need to be versus some of the stuff that we have now, which are not the right signs. Signs that are faded, that need to be replaced. So yeah, we've increased the number quite a bit. We also, there's a small tool, a signpost digger, post hole digger, that thing that we put in here as well, because we're going to move away from the U channels. We're going to the box with the breakaways in it. That hopefully will allow us to, if they get run over by cars or whatever, they break away instead of bending and causing more damages. So yes, it is a big expense, but it's something that we feel like we should do for the betterment of the city.
Alderman Wesley, you have a
So-
follow-up?
With that amount, how many signs are we replacing right now? I mean, how much is this going to give you for the city for signs?
This should probably get us I don't know the number of signs actually. It'll probably get us about maybe a ward and a little bit done. So this will be an ongoing project, ongoing program.
So I'm just looking.
Yes, so
you're
move.
looking at 50, you're looking at 150,000 or 200,000 to do the whole entire city. If you go ward by ward, if you're saying this is a ward.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably, between 150 and 200,000
So the
dollars.
40,000, 50,000 that you propose will take care of the whole entire ward right now.
That's what we're hoping that it
Okay.
does. Mhm.
So then may I follow up with the one underneath there?
Yeah, follow up,
Let's
please.
go with the pavement striping. So we raise that
Mhm.
50,000. Am I right? For 25, projected, all right, 35, from 25 to 75. All right, what?
Yeah, please,
You're
thank
raising, so is the area that we budget for last year, 40,000, is that all, did we spend all 40,000?
Mr. York?
We are working with the contractor to try to get all of that spent before April 30th. The odds of us doing that is slim. That's why we only projected it to be 25,000. So we did last year, and we're also waiting on some bills and stuff from them.
You waiting for what?
Some bills and such from them. What we did last year was we did all of the residential portion of Ward 4, which was part of the program that we asked them for last year. We're trying to go to 75,000 because we have to do the industrial part of Ward 4. And then we're gonna move on to, I believe the next section is Ward, I believe, the next ward. I don't know if we're going in reverse, if we're going backwards, if we're gonna make Mr. Catalano and Mr. Sorrentino happy, if I'm gonna make Mr. Messina and Mr. Jacob happy. I'm not exactly sure. Somebody over here on this side of the dais is gonna be happy. Plus, we're also working on a program to make sure the crosswalks for the schools are done on a yearly basis as well.
So, well,
Follow up.
let's follow up with that. So, what I just heard tonight, that you did every residential crosswalk in the 4th ward. That's what was said tonight.
No, I don't believe I said that. I believe I said the pavement striping in Ward 4 was done.
All the pavement striping in Ward 4 was
Yeah.
done.
In the residential
That's
portion of Ward
About Ward
4.
1.
So that is like the marking for crosswalks and
Yeah.
that. Well, I will tell you one thing, it ain't done. You're telling me you did the whole entire 4th ward?
That
didn't you?
is scheduled to be done this fiscal year, and we still have 2 months of the fiscal year remaining.
He's saying at the
By
fiscal
April
year end,
30th.
it will be done.
So you're gonna finish, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna finish,
Ward 4, and then go to the next ward.
even if we don't finish it this fiscal year, you're gonna
Yes.
take that funding of $80,000 and finish all the work.
75.
Okay. Alderman Woods?
Matt, is this expansion of that line item, are any of these walks going to be the expanded walks like we did on Wooddale Road?
This is just for the thermoplastic. This is not for the brick inlays. This is, well, this is just for the traditional white thermoplastic.
Just clarify.
Okay. Do we have any other questions in this section? Alderman Catalano?
Well, a different section, the natural gas utilities, $6,000 for Royal Oaks gas lights. Have we ever looked into that to see if maybe we can change them to electricity? Wouldn't it be cheaper?
Somebody answer that, please. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, a couple things. One is, yeah, I believe that's been a long-standing contract for that, and I don't know 100%, but I believe that was brought up when we did the subdivision and didn't go very far. So, 'cause I know we did spend quite a bit of money
Who owns
fixing
them?
some
Who
of
owns
those.
those gas lights?
I believe the maintenance of the lights is the responsibility of the subdivision, but there was an agreement signed
Over 50
40,
years
40,
ago.
50 years ago that the city would pay for them, but they would maintain them.
This was one of those things, actually, when we redid Royal Oaks, I mean, the attorney looked into it because we had talked about that, and
It's a letter from, yeah, there was some kind of letter. I remember.
there were, yeah, I think the
I
mayor,
forget what it
they
was.
had,
Somebody had it.
they looked into it, and I know they had asked Royal Oak if they could do electric, and they wanted to keep the gas, and I know it was a big controversial issue back then.
Okay, thank
Alderman
you.
Catalano? Any other questions? Let's move on to the next section.
On to the motor fuel tax fund. Slight decrease in commodities, slight decrease in electric, and a budgetary decrease in snow and ice control. Specifically, I believe the budgetary number for salt went down a little bit. And then the interfund transfer last year, that $400,000 was to go to fund part of the Ward 2 street program, which will be commencing in the spring. So during the CIP, last year, went back and looked, and it was a one-time kind of transfer. Certainly, if you'd like to renew that transfer going forward, we certainly could, but direction last year was for one time, and then, so that's why it went to zero this year, so.
Mayor?
Yeah, I had this discussion with Brad, and I thought when we discussed it last time at budget, I mean, we got the 400,000 for the Ward 2 streets, so, instead of taking it out of capital projects or whatever, we took it out of here. I thought we were going to not keep this hefty balance of 800,000. I mean, actually, road and bridge and motor fuel together are $1.2 million. And really, between the two accounts, if we're generous, we only really need to keep 300,000 between the two of them, which leaves us 900,000. But even if we just work off the motor fuel tax going forward, not just one project, I'll be more specific this time. Could we at least bring this down from 800,000 down to 300,000 and use that money for road projects? Like, we did the CIP. CIP, we were short. We had some red in there, and, well, I think the first year was 1.4, or next year's budget, $1.4 million. If you took 500,000 here, all of a sudden you're down to 900,000. You go out to further years, what was red all of a sudden turned black. So right here, we've got this money. Why aren't we using it? Just to keep it in the bank? Unless if you were making 10% interest, then maybe I could see why you want to keep it there, but.
Mr. Wilson?
Sure. Yeah, and sadly, I don't think we're getting 10% anywhere right now, so. Yeah, and the one thing that I know we briefly discussed was, part of it's a methodology issue. Because local roads, when you do a project using MFT money, there's quite a few more hoops that you have to jump through, you have to go through to get the project bid and signed off on. And so, and speaking with the Public Works Department, to try to minimize those headaches, one methodology is to run it up to a pretty significant balance, $800,000, $1 million, then do one big project for $800,000, and only have to deal with the headaches of local roads and IDOT and MFT once, instead of doing multiple $100,000 projects where you're going to keep running into those same headaches. But certainly it is within, the usability and the right to transfer and put any amount you want to it. We just need to let Public Works know so that when they bid the engineering for it in the project, that it gets bid appropriately to run it through local roads.
Follow-up, Mayor?
Yeah, so are you asking for the council to give you direction to keep, 200,000, let's say 300,000 in there, and anything above, when we get to 400,000 or 500,000, we do a road project, or what, resurfacing? How do you want to do it so we don't really have to discuss this every year?
Mr. Wilson?
Sure, and that's where, like I said, the methodology comes in. Do you want to, do one, just, run it up and do one massive project for, $750,000, or, do, $250,000 every couple of years? It's
We
really
have
what the.
Continue.
We have road resurfacing coming up, I think, in the out years for 950,000, so if 500 comes here, boom, right away, massive project, right?
Mr. Wilson? Alderman Wesley? Oh, okay, Alderman Woods?
All right, my question is, if we drop it down, and the only reason why we were in, because the Irving Park Road came in $2 million over budget. The point is, I'd rather leave it here, and then if we have to move it, and projects come in over, then you can take out of this fund. Why?
Mr.
Well,
Mr.
you're
Wilson?
asking to take this money right now. If
Okay.
I'm mistaken, the discussion was taking this money down and putting it into capital projects, right?
The mayor says he could explain this, so I'm going
Okay.
to defer to the mayor here.
So if we go out for a project, if you didn't propose that this money's going to this project, we can't just do that at a certain point after the project's been bid out and everything. It has to be done ahead of time.
Why, it's more a fuel tax.
Go ahead, you want to explain? Maybe you can give a better explanation.
There's just rules.
Mr., well, let's have Alderman Woods ask his question, and then we'll have,
Questions / explanation. I think we're trying to do the same thing. You want to pull it out, and Brad's saying, wait a year, we'll do a whole project. Instead of splitting it over 3 projects, forcing us to meet all the MFT fund
Criteria.
and IDOT. So if we leave it and then take next year's project, pull out $1 million and do the one project, and we're settled with that. Is that?
And that's it, so that's what I'm asking, do they want direction, so we don't even have to mention this ever again? Once we get down to we always want to keep 200,000 or 250,000 in there, because we really only need to keep about 50 or 75, so we're even adding a cushion to 200, 250, so you got 830, take 250 off of that, whatever's left, you got 900,000 worth of road projects next year, boom, done. So it's automatic. So you got, unless there's a project that comes in that needs to be done, then it's a different story, but it's gonna go to road project anyways, because it has to be specific.
any comment, Mr. Wilson?
No, I just, if that's the consensus, then yes, certainly we'll let Public Works know to bid that project out and have them bid it out in accordance with the IDOT MFT rules for the resurfacing program next year. And then, we'll account for it accordingly at that point, yeah. We just need direction that that's what we want to do with the money at this time and point.
Okay, Mayor, I guess, what's the direction you want us to?
If you guys have to agree, there has to be an agreement, so do you want to keep 200, 250,000, or 300,000, whatever the number you guys feel comfortable with, really in this fund?
100,000 is good.
Right, you only need 75 or 50, so anything above that, then they can use the money for road projects. The CIP, you guys saw, we had red, right? This will help get rid of some of the red, and then we'll have to figure out the rest when next CIP. Then they automatically know that that's what they need to do. Instead of waiting for it to get to 800,000 and somebody bring it up, they know, hey, and how much you want them to take? 400,000? Anything over 400,000, you want them to use it up.
Mr. Wilson, I guess, would you have a suggested amount for any particular reason, or?
Part of it
Yeah,
is
I mean-
whatever job you're gonna bid out. So you might get an $800,000 job and you wind up with a 250 balance. It could be a 6 or it could be a 9. You wind up
Right.
with 125.
So
As long as we don't go below the 1, which would be the direction.
he asked for 100, that's fine, good.
Yeah, I think tonight, for purposes of direction, if we know that 100's the floor, and that we want to use the excess money for next year's resurfacing program to get that to Public Works, and, the analysts, for when they do the RFP, when they do the bid, that's fine, and I think, probably we're not gonna, solve all the nuances of this tonight, so we're gonna come back at a future meeting and solve the nuances. So 100,000 is the floor. At what point do we start to pull money out? Probably not 150, you probably want to run it up a little bit. So as long as we know 100 is the floor, we can start to work on that and come back with a more nuanced program, in the future, if that's okay with everyone.
Well, since this will be such a change, if we can maybe just do a roll call on this one, just for reference.
How much we need it.
100,000,
Not to fall below 100,000.
not to fall below 100,000.
That's the direction.
We're giving direction.
Do you don't need a motion. You want a motion? Direction is fine.
Direction is fine, 'cause we'll come back with a more formalized policy, just so we know what the,
Yeah.
kind of the nuts and bolts are tonight, to formulate the policy.
So 100,000, not to go below 100,000, if we could just take a roll call on that.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes, I think you have your consensus. Okay. Do we have any other questions on this tab? With that, let's move to the next tab.
So the next fund up in the book is the tourism fund. As we've discussed many times, you know, the monies in tourism can only be used to promote the city. Tourism, this is where, you know, Prairie Fest, volunteer dinner, dial ride program, Memorial Day parade, et cetera. Those costs come out of here. So we do list some of the events there. There was one increased item, or an expanded level item in this one for a marketing and branding project within the city. And then one note out of last week's council meeting, we, per the direction of the council, going to increase the donation to the Historical Society by the $5,000, again, per the direction of the council last week. So again, I'd like to take, you know, the main pages here and then hit the green sheet after the main pages, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay, I have one question on the main page. For the tourism fund, I always thought that we could only use that for events and things, but we're transferring $200,000 to the general fund, if you could just explain that.
Sure, so the transfer to the general fund, by and large, is a administrative reimbursement fee, so the overtime for the police department, for the fest, public works, you know, myself, the manager a little bit, those people that work the fest, also, you know, to put together, the people that put together the fest, the volunteer dinner, Memorial Day parade, those are just the administrative costs, salaries and some O&M costs as well are built into that, which is consistent with how the transfers that you'll see throughout the rest of the budget document are constructed.
Alderman Catalano?
On page 93, the tourism fund, video gaming, I thought that was supposed to go in the general fund.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, direction from the council, when video gaming was approved, was to put in the tourism fund to help promote economic development through in the city, which is why then on the 94, you'll see the economic development line, the marketing, branding, things of that nature. So it's been in the tourism fund since its inception, actually.
So can we use that for the clock tower?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
The mayor said it, but yes.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I would like to add to the donation, since we're giving them out, that we give the equal amount to the Lions Club, the VFW, the Legion, and the Wooddale Educational Foundation. We give them $5,000 apiece too.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, just, was that 4 or 5?
That was 4, unless,
So that'd be $20,000 then?
$20,000.
Mayor?
It was, when I said last week, Alderman Woods is referring to charity galas this week, and the reason we started charity gala is so these organizations could raise extra funds, and basically, this weekend's next is the second gala, so depending what they raise, right, there could be another 2,500 or 3,000 per group, or maybe more. It all depends how successful it is. I understand what Alderman was just trying to say. That's why we started the gala, so we don't continue to keep giving out these extra 5,000s.
And I'm okay giving them as long as we're fair across the board. That's all I'm saying. So, I mean, they're all good organizations.
Correct.
And the Lions say they need some new equipment, the VFW, I mean, everybody's got issues, so.
Any other questions here? Alderman Wesley?
Season decorations, we go from 8,000 or 10,000 last year, and now we up to 25,000. What are we buying?
Mr. Wilson?
I mean, that's a huge increase. That's 15 grand.
Sure. Not to be dismissive, but can we get some clarity on the donation issue first?
I guess, are we, You were asking to give 5,000 to, what charities?
Lions Club, VFW, Legion, and Wooddale Educational Foundation.
And not Sister City?
Sister
I
cities?
haven't thought about that one. Are you suggesting that one?
What do they get back?
That'd be great. 7 out of 7.
And the reason I chose these, because they were buying equipment or remodeling, which was the criteria that the other one, but I'm open to that if you have a suggestion.
We,
Alderman Messina?
we had talked about bringing language, foreign language there, so I know, like Nunzio, somebody had mentioned that Casa Italia does it and people would pay. So we talked about bringing lessons here and offering that. I don't think it'll be that significant, but they bring workbooks and they bring tutors and all that good stuff. And a lot of residents are going to pay to send their people, or their children rather, for that, so.
I'm on board if everybody agrees.
Alderman
I'm on
Wesley?
board, but why don't we just eliminate the Gala Ball then? I mean, what was the purpose of that?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying, if we're gonna do this
But that-
for every organization, and I see everyone's point here, then why put our staff time and effort and everything else for the Gala Ball then? Eliminate the Gala Ball then after this year. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, I have no problem doing it, but if we're going to keep doing donations and everything for all these organizations, then what is the purpose of the Gala Ball? What is the purpose? Someone needs to explain what's the purpose to go
Mayor.
for a party?
It's very simple. We started the gala, so this kind of stuff, these extra 5,000, doesn't come up. It's a simple, you know what? We're doing the gala, that's what we're doing. I'm sorry, but that's it. Then last week, we passed another 5,000. I understand Alderman Wood's frustration is, if we're just gonna give away 5,000, what's the use of doing the gala, all this work, meeting time and energy, if we're just gonna give it away? This has, all the organizations are invested into making it successful, and they could, if there was, if the effort, depending on what type of effort, each organization could make 5,000 each year. Addison, when they do theirs, it's 50 to 60,000. Last year was our first year, we did it almost, I believe it was 20,000 or 22,000.
3 times the size of us. Compare with them.
And I understand. So is 2,500, if each organization gets $2,500, is that enough? That's, Alderman was trying to make a point here, so we're just gonna
I'm just
get.
trying to be fair.
Right, I know, and I understand.
And they're all good organizations.
Right,
A couple
they're all-
may go, why, then,
They're all good for the community.
just didn't, and I forgot about Sister City, so I apologize.
No,
That's because I missed the last 2 meetings. They're not a nonprofit.
Right. So,
Alderman Catalano, you,
Now, we're gonna have the churches come forward too, so I think we better sit down and talk about this and come up and formulate maybe an ordinance, I don't know.
I'm sitting and talking.
Thank you.
Mayor, you had something further to add?
I said it last week. That's why we're doing the gala. And then there was a motion, a second, everybody went along. At some point, you guys are gonna have to draw the line. If you just wanna write the $40,000 check, then write the check. But is that the best, I know these are all good organizations. That's why we did the gala, so we can help them out. Sounded like a good idea, worked very well last year, I thought. Actually, this year's attendance is gonna be higher than last year, so we're building it. You guys wanna write the $40,000 check? Let's not waste any more time and expending all that time and energy on the gala. Really. Guys, I don't even vote unless you guys tie, so.
Okay, I guess, what are we voting on, to give everybody 5,000, to all those other charities
Oh, that's
5,000?
what you guys wanna do, just give the money away, go ahead.
And then to do away with the gala?
Well, I don't know, you guys,
Let's expand the gala, but if we're handing out money, we have to be fair to the rest of the community and the rest of the organization. So that's all I'm saying.
you don't have,
Can we reverse that?
of course you can. You can do it right now if you want to. Sure you can.
In the sense of keeping it fair, reverse the
Huh?
decision.
No.
Do it the next council.
And again, the historical side. I mean,
It comes at the- it comes up at the council meeting.
So I get it.
See, hold on a second.
I-
That's gonna come up at the council meeting. It's gonna come up, and if you guys say, well, no, we did the budget and we decided that the gala's enough, then that's what it is. That was a committee meeting, then it goes to the council meeting.
Mr.
No, what I was
Murmas,
saying is if we wanted to change our mind, it would be at the next council meeting.
Right.
You'd have to do it at the council.
You'd have to do it at the
Because it was
council meeting,
approved at
right.
the council.
I'll sum it all up.
Alderman Wesley.
All right, it's a saved argument here. Let's give everyone this time a one-time donation of $5,000 and that's it.
It's good.
No, that's
Then
it.
you're gonna give everybody the money every year. It's gonna,
You know, don't let's forget, we got water rates that keep going up.
Can't do anything with that.
I understand that, but we have other issues in the city that we got to worry about.
that's why he's making the point.
Okay. Mr. Murmas, any input here? Go ahead.
I'm just looking forward to the decision.
Okay, let's,
I don't know where you guys are
Alderman
going.
Sorrentino?
You know, I think we may be rushing into this, and the gala is definitely a big fundraiser for the organizations that are part of it. And I think if by us just giving the money, it kind of demotivates them from getting involved and helping us help them. So, you know, I would suggest we hold off on giving anybody any more money. Let's see what this Saturday turns out and take it from there. And then bring up this other motion that we had last week at our next meeting.
I would agree, Alderman Woods, would that be okay? Mr. Wilson?
Okay. I think that sounds like consensus for now,
So
so
can we
we'll
go
go.
back?
So, back to Alderman Wesley's question.
How the season decoration goes up that high?
Sure, I'm going to defer to Mr. York
Okay.
for that question.
Mr. York?
Yes, during this past year, we have purchased some more LED Christmas lights for out front here. We also purchased Christmas lights, LED Christmas lights for the treatment plant. Post-tree lighting, there were some discussions that were had between staff and also with some electeds that they would like to see things be a little bit brighter and better for the upcoming year. So we've got some plans in place to do some more decorating down at the treatment plant, to do some changing out here in front. At some point in time, the corner is going to be done, hopefully next November. We'll be able to get in there maybe and do some more work back on the corner. The treatment plant has a lot of room to become better, so those are the things that will we spend all $25,000? Probably close to, but maybe not all the way to 25,000, but we know there's a lot of work that we need to do to get the city holiday lighting up to where certain people want it to be.
What happens to all the old lights we put up? The lights that we put up this year, where
Yeah. Those get taken down, they get rolled up, they get put in plastic tubs, and they get labeled to where they were at. So it's not like we're not the city of Chicago, we don't go through and just cut them down and throw them away. We utilize them year after year. But when we, for this year, some of the things for next year is to do the big the big trees around the memorial, do all the little bushes and trees up by the new administration building and building 20 over at the treatment plant. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done, but yeah, we utilize those year after year.
If I'm not mistaken, too, I think I was on the council when we even talked about possibly hiring someone to do Christmas decorations to make the town look nice for the holidays, so I would see this as a good thing. No, well, yeah, we didn't hire him, but. Any other questions? Mr. Wilson, I think we can move on.
Yeah, just moving on to the green sheet, within the tourism fund, the marketing and branding campaign.
Any questions on this? Alderman Catalano.
Is this just for the O'Hara Expressway, or is it throughout the whole city?
The idea for this would be citywide campaign, because, citywide.
I mean, if they're gonna start again with Urban Park Road, I mean, we know what the issues are on Urban Park Road, that place has to be rezoned. So I think it's gonna be just a waste of money.
No, this is different.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, this would be more for the marketing, branding. For example, you look around and, like the leaves on the new wayfinding signs look different than the leaves on our polos or the business cards, or, so trying to come up with a consistent theme, a consistent branding, a consistent marketing, consistent font on all the city marketing pieces, things of that nature, and, a whole host of other things that I'm sure I'm missing that, but it's to market the city just en masse to present itself better in the economic development community.
Shouldn't we wait till most of the construction is completed and?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, my understanding of this is that a lot of this stuff isn't really germane to the construction. It's, the logo, the slogans, the fonts, things of that nature are completely separate from the fonts. I mean, if there's any more pointed questions, I'd have to defer to Mr. Cage or Ms. Chrissy, but.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Wesley, do you have a question?
It is out of tourism.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Do we have any, any other questions? Is everyone for this? Yes? Is there any no's for this? Okay. Sounds like it's a yes. Let's continue.
Next fund up is our narcotics forfeiture fund. As you're aware, this is where the expenses for the K-9 unit come out of. The decrease this year, last year, the significant cost was actually acquiring the new dog and the training. This year, clearly, we're not having to purchase and train another unit, which is why the capital outlay amount decreased so significantly. Otherwise, it's pretty much SOP on this fund from a year-to-year basis.
Any questions? Let's continue.
So this one is a new fund this year, the infamous TIF District Number 1, which is the TIF that we've been talking about for a while. Admittedly, we're not sure what the increment that we're going to get from the county this year is. We actually, Treasurer Porch just passed me the sheet that the county's looking for some banking information to where to deposit the tax money, so that seems like a good sign that we're going to get some tax money. But as you can see on the subsequent page, I believe we have professional services in there, so we're estimating at this point $50,000 in revenue and then $50,000 in expenses for the TIF fund the first year. We should be in early March getting the preliminary tax levy from the county, so we'll have a little bit of a better idea there. And also on March 14th, we're having the TIF funding workshop where we'll dive into more of the mechanics of how this fund will work going forward. So right now, it's an estimate, and then we're just matching expenses to revenues.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Okay, let's move on.
This is the General Capital Projects Fund, the infamous CIP, which we discussed back in January. Again, you heard me say this a couple hours ago. The significant decrease was due to the changing in the funding methodology for the intersection improvement study. But this, the numbers here are all derived from the CIP meeting that we had back in January with the changes that were recommended at that meeting.
Alderman Wesley.
What is the, first one number, what is the DCEO grant?
Mr. Wilson.
Sure. That ultimately winds up being one of the grants for the Mill Road project. Yeah, I think it's technically a CDBG grant, but it flows through, a lot of the paperwork comes from DECO, so.
Okay, if no questions, let's move on.
Equipment
Wait, Alderman Wesley.
Investments. So, 15 and then it goes up to 20.
Mr. Wilson.
Sure. So part of this is, as, you know, some of the timing of the projects, we're, now that some of the bigger projects from the last couple of years are gone, and then we're not too worried about having to front the $10 million for the intersection study. We're able to do some different things to hopefully generate some additional revenues out of this fund. You know, with trying to time like some CDs or some other low-risk investments to generate a little more revenue than the 0.01% in the now accounts that we're getting.
Okay, I think we could move on.
The equipment replacement fund, this is the inactive fund. As I said, it's presented in the book just to tie out all the summary numbers. So there's no activity in this account. The account's dead, it's closed, so.
Let's continue. Alderman Wesley. We're on page 104. Brad, do we miss a facade program?
It's back in capital projects on page 102.
Okay, let's go back.
So, let me ask you a question, could they just, for the facade program, could they just put in for, what's their sign? If they want to do a facade program, does their sign just count for a facade program if someone comes in and wants to do their sign?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I would have to defer to Mr. Cage or
Mr.
Ms.
Cage.
Chrissy on that, because I know there's the criteria that was discussed, but I'm not sure how the.
I'm not really sure.
The minimum value of a project has to be $10,000. So if somebody wanted to come in for a new sign, they could. They may not receive 50% of the reimbursement because there were the criteria that were approved. So it is likely that somebody could come in, but they just might not receive the full 50%, and they'd still have to meet the minimum criteria.
Alderman Sismarski, did you have a question?
This council voted on that when Fred Lazar was here, the council prior.
It was 20.
You lowered it from lowered it down to 5, well, people almost down and lower than that. They didn't want it to pay, they wanted it.
The lower put up 5, we put up 5.
Correct, right, the total project value is 10, and then the city would reimburse up to 50% based on then the criteria that were approved.
Alderman Wesley, continue.
So if someone wants to just do a sign, the sign is 10 G's or whatever, how much will they get?
It really depends on the project, because they have to meet certain criteria. And I don't recall exactly how many points were awarded for each of the criteria, so I can get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine, thank you.
Okay. Let's continue.
Sure, so do equipment replacement to the land acquisition fund. This is the fund where the city transfers and accounts for its acquisition of land. The only real expenses that we typically budget for on a year-to-year basis, as we're not always fully cognizant of any properties that the city may buy, is the run-out real estate taxes that we know we're going to incur. So the expenses this year, the $65,000, are our best guess at the run-out property taxes that we're going to have to pay for the SBT property, for the, the escrow that they put up when they sold the property, the change of ownership for the remainder of 2015.
Do we have any questions on this? Let's continue.
The next one is the SURF fund, which we mentioned a few times tonight, the sinking fund and the methodology. So that's kind of the full impact. Well, this is the capital outlay. So the first year, we had the plow truck and a few other vehicles being replaced. This year, there's about $255,000 in governmental vehicle replacements, which is Public Works, non-water, and the police department. $67,000 estimated in the enterprise, which is the water fund projects. So for this year, and then on page 109 through 112 is the schedule, the replacement schedule for all the vehicles within the city's fleet.
Okay. I have a couple questions here, and then I think Alderman Catalano has something. The whole, from what I understand, the scoring, the lower the score, the more we're in need of a new vehicle, correct? And just going through this, like for instance, I'm looking at page 109. We have a trailer at 32%, which we're pushing out a year, but we're going to purchase a light source that's 50%. So why wouldn't we do? I mean, I thought that's the whole purpose of these percentages is the worst shape equipment is what we replace. So and I do have something like, same thing with the police department. I mean, we have vehicles that are 88%, we want to replace them, and we have vehicles there that are way under the 88%. So I'm kind of confused on the whole purpose of the scoring of how we do this. I don't know if somebody could answer that question. Mr. Wilson?
By and large, I'll defer to Mr. York. I mean, I know a couple of the answers, but I'll defer to him. He's probably got a more voluminous response for you.
Yeah, basically what the scoring is, the scoring gives us an idea of what we need to do. In the plan that we brought forward last year, at 50%, it automatically goes to year one. Anything between 65 and 50 gets relooked at, or 65 and below gets relooked at. We also take into account usage of it. Just because something is 32% to trailer, how much do we really use it? Do we need to replace it immediately, or can we get another year out of it? The one in question, the 32% one, we took a look at it, and does it need to be replaced? Yeah, probably. Can we get another year or two out of it? Yeah, we can get another year or two out of it. So we're trying to be, with the percentages, dictating kind of how we do things, but we're also trying to be frugal and stuff at the same time, and not just say, just because it's at 50%, do I replace it? But at 50%, I take that good hard look at it. With the police department, equipment, the ones that are really, really bad, they're like the express van. I know that's used very sparingly. That was a seizure. The vehicles that are up for replacement are the vehicles that are on a 3-year rotation. So if you remember how the scoring system works, a lot of it is based upon age. Age is a high criteria. If it's 3 years old, it may still be a 9. But if it's got 60,000 miles on it, it's gonna lower it. So the percentages that we put on here are just another tool for us to use to justify the replacement of the vehicles, but it's not the only tool. We also have to use kind of trends that we're seeing in the fields, in looking at each of these vehicles in and of itself, not just a number.
Okay, I guess with that, I guess one question I would have is, we have a F-150 pickup truck at 75%, and we're pushing that out to 2019, but all the ones that are 87% we're doing for 2017.
For that one, the F-150 pickup trucks in the police department, they have a different replacement schedule that we developed. That is the CSO vehicles. So they have a different replacement schedule versus the rank and file squad cars. And Chief can probably explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, I could even touch on that we have one F-150 that we just keep traffic control equipment and stuff that really doesn't get hardly driven at all, but when we have events or large accidents, we take it out. Like Squad 420, that vehicle doesn't have lights on the top anymore. That's an old squad car that we drive to Fenton High School every day. Rather than taking it unmarked, we take one that has police markings, and we work with Fenton to, hey, we'd rather have someone see that there's a police car out there, and we have an officer in the school. So that was changed a few years ago. And that one probably gets a few hundred miles a year, but we're not going to buy a new one just to drive back and forth to the high school. So it's all based upon use, and the percentage is a guideline, but then when we come back to replace a car, we do a much more in-depth scoring that we share with you too.
That answers my question. Alderman Catalano had a question there.
Yeah, for the committee of Wooddale for a Greener Tomorrow, we're looking at purchasing a whole electric car, non-emergency, of course. I know the gas prices are down right now, but they won't be staying down that, forever. So I was just wondering where we can put that in the,
Wilson?
I'll defer to Alderman Wesley for a moment.
Alderman Wesley?
If I'm mistaken, if I'm reading this right, there's 2 community developer cars being replaced 2017, right? Am I?
That's correct.
Okay, so why could we not, council, decide to replace one of those with an electric car? Because Clean Air Tomorrow, the point is, there might be also grant money out there to get it. And believe it or not, after our discussion last night, I just found out that Elmhurst has 2 of them. They just purchased a second one. And I did call them and ask how they are, and they like them, so. I mean, if we could look at doing that with one of these cars. So,
we also can put a logo on the door, Wooddale for a Greener Tomorrow. That would be nice.
Mr. Wilson?
I mean, defer to Mr. Eric, but I don't see any issue with programming one of those as a hybrid/electric vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, we can look into that and we can move forward with that if that's what the council wants us to do.
Right.
The only downside of that is, we're going to probably need some additional training for our mechanics on how to fix electronic cars, because it's not the same as a gas or diesel or combustion engine. So we can look into that. We may have to bump up our training for our mechanics as well, if that's something we want to do this year. Or if we don't do it this year, maybe next year.
I'd like to do it this year since we replaced it.
Okay.
We're replacing 2 next year as well, so.
Alderman Catalano, you have a follow-up?
And you know what I'm going to say, it has to be made in the USA.
Good luck.
Alderman Woods?
As far as the vehicles go, you were talking at one of the meetings before, maintenance, when we were discussing the longevity of these vehicles and comparing the amount of money we put into them to keep them going versus getting rid of them. And at one point, I believe that you said that as a general practice, that you, at a certain period of time, repaint the cabs and everything on these trucks. Is that true? And if so, can we revisit that? Do we need to continue that as a general practice?
Mr. York?
Yeah, that's something that we would do on our larger vehicles. Normally, for the large dump trucks, we're trying to get 12 years out of those, 12 to 14, 15 years out of those. So that would normally take place around year 6 to 7 is when we would send them in to be sandblasted and repainted.
But again, not to cut you off, that's a significant cost. So, I mean, do we get that return back? I get the truck's gonna look like new when you bring it back, but that's
Well, it's going to look like new, but it's also not going to have the rusting that would normally take place, especially with the large 2.5-ton dump trucks, that their primary job is to spread road salt on the roadways. So,
Pardon my point.
yeah, so by having them spot patched, the undercoating, sandblasted, repainted, new undercoatings put on there to hopefully keep the rust at bay for the 12-year cycle of the vehicle, instead of at year 8 or year 9 having components that are rusting away. We can look at that. We haven't done that since I've been here. It's something that we're looking at, especially with the newer vehicles that we've gotten. We've also have been trying out different cleaners and solvents as well, to testing on our newer vehicles to see if we can reduce the rusting of the vehicles and the oxidation of certain parts on it. So we're trying to do a bunch of little things right now, so we don't have to do that big thing at year 6 or year 7, but we're still kind of in our pilot program on those, trying to get to that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Sorrentino?
Thank you. What I'd ask you to keep in mind is work in unison with the marketing and branding department, because any painting that you do, let it all be part of the marketing and branding. Alderman Catalano suggested that if we were to do an electric car, to put the logo of the greener, sorry, I can't remember the name, but anything that we do from today forward should work in tandem with the marketing and branding program. That's all.
Did we need consensus on the electric vehicle? Okay. Is everyone in favor of the electric vehicle?
To just take one of the regular replacements and make it an electric?
Yeah, one of the regular replacements. I guess we'd have to ask Mr. York which one we would do.
Well, I mean, I guess it would probably be a community development car, but we also have to, the numbers in here probably aren't gonna match. Plus, we're gonna need to do charging stations and those kinds of things, so, since this just kinda came up, we probably wanna adjust that number.
Walgreens, Elk Grove.
Any idea of how much we'd want to add?
I found out about this about 3 minutes ago, so.
Okay. Okay. I think we're in agreement.
Yeah.
Is there anybody against this? Okay, I guess Mike, were you against this, or? Oh, okay. Everybody's good? Okay, we'll continue.
Tesla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, moving on, now into the enterprise funds, business type activities. The first one is commuter parking lot. Really the couple of items on here, the increase in the contractual is increased costs related to the cleaning of the train station. Then in commodities, you'll notice that the maintenance of the building went up pretty significantly. Starting to notice a little bit of wear on the building over there, and so might need to do some more in-depth projects and maintenance at this time. I believe there's a couple items that have just recently come up. So just want to be prepared, just to stay on top of it, to keep the building looking nice, not let it, fall down too much. And then the other is just the increase in credit card processing fees, as more and more people are using their debit or credit card to pay their $1.50 at the train station. They still haven't really fixed the small ticket portion of the Durbin, customer protection bill that's is very punitive on small tickets. But, we offer it also through the app, so, as more and more people are doing that, the costs of that are going up a little bit, so.
Alderman Catalano?
On that credit card processing fee, why can't we charge the residents or the people who use it? I mean, I'm looking at over $20,000 if we go to page 18 and page 178. I mean, we're paying over $20,000 a year in processing fees. I mean, if I pay with credit card with my gas bill, they charge me for it. Why can't we do that?
Mr. Wilson?
There's really nothing per se saying that we can't. That's just been the longstanding policy of the council, is, they wanted to offer that option to pay to the residents, and so we haven't done that. I know certain vendors, it's built in. Like I said, we don't have it built in, and it's also on a sliding scale, things of that nature. And even at the train station, I don't even know how we'd build that in over the train station, just at the machine, so.
So the resident that pays their bill without a credit card, I mean, it's pretty much coming out of their taxes. I mean, they're pretty much paying for it.
I think the mayor might have a comment here.
Yeah, well, that's why we raised the fees a couple of years ago, because of that specifically. It was cheaper to park there, then when we got the machines, we did raise the fees to offset some of this cost, so that's already that was a few, I forget how many years ago it is now, but, right, that's why we raised the rates. That was part of it. We were a little cheaper, but we raised them because we put the machines in and whatnot.
Okay, Alderman Messina?
Can I just challenge you guys at least look at, there's a lot of new technology out there. Are you sure with the credit card processing now, and maybe can we look at, see if there's a cheaper option? Like there's processors out there now?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we could. Part of the problem, especially with the train station, is the way that the bill was written. I mean, every processor has to charge this. It's 0.25% of the fee. So, I'm not sure.
Follow up?
I know you guys have a terminal, I'm assuming, like here, I don't mean like the ones that are built from machines, but most places have like a terminal, and you swipe it through that terminal, and you get hit with a fee every time you swipe that terminal. Which I'm guessing if they come to City Hall, that's where they run into that stuff. Some of that routine stuff, I think we could farm out. I mean, technology's advanced so much on those machines. I'd be curious to see if there's a difference than who we're going through now. I can give you some names if you'd like to dig it out.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, we can talk, so it's, there's, because we have the point of sale machine in the finance department, we have the terminal machines at the Metro parking station, and then we have the online processors that we work with, so.
Okay. I had a question on the printing. What kind of printing do we do for the train station, commuter parking lot?
Sure, the hang cards for the quarterly passes.
Okay. Alderman Wesley?
Two.
Go ahead.
2016, we paid $24,000 for cleaning the train station. So we go up $6,000 for this year.
Mr. Wilson?
My reading's right. 2016, 24,000. Next year, 31.
That's the projected for this year.
Proposal is 35. $6 grand.
Mr. Wilson?
I'm sure as you're all aware, we did recently change cleaning companies at the train station, and that is within a few dollars the net effect of that change, contract to contract.
$6 grand change?
Almost, yeah.
Okay, so,
Follow up?
yeah, I really would like to see the contract on the train station, what they actually do. Okay, and then let's go down to, maybe I missed it, the maintenance of building and grounds, $20,000.
Mr. Wilson?
Sure, that's why I referenced, as, the station's not old, but it's getting older, and so we want to make sure that, as issues come up, and that we're also being a little more preventative in nature. I was talking with Mr. Cage earlier, and I know he said there's a couple issues that have presented themselves recently over there at the train station that we want to make sure we stay on top of and keep it in as good a shape as possible. Is 20,000 a little high? Perhaps, but not knowing, the extent of some of the potential issues, we wanted to make sure we had adequate funding for that, over the next few years, like I said, to keep the train station looking as nice on the exterior and some of the interior stuff as we need. If there's a thought that that's a little too high, I mean, we could certainly, back that down, not knowing specific projects, but we just wanted to ensure that with some of the emerging issues, we were prepared to handle those.
Oh, no, the reason why I asked that is because I will tell you one thing, I don't think we have put that much, money into that train station to maintain it the way we should be. I mean, got to do with landscaping and everything. I mean,
Well,
so yeah, 20 Gs, I expected. Since we didn't put any money into it, right now we got a leaking roof, so who knows what that's gonna cost.
Well, and
Mr.
that's-
Wilson?
Yeah, and that's one of the items that's come up recently, and to your point, yeah, we need to put money into it to keep it up, so.
Well, I'm just saying, from now on, it should be money put away, at least don't say we gotta spend it, but we should always budget at least $10,000 to maintain a building, just like maintaining your house.
Sure.
I mean, you go from, back 2015, we put $485, then we went to 3,000, then we went to 990, we up to 20. I mean, let's set a dollar amount every year, or we don't have to have the discussion on this again. Put $10,000 away every year for a train station.
Mr. Wilson?
Just, I mean, we're, recognizing that exact fact, that's why we bumped that up, to try and make sure that we were gonna be able to cover, and, I hate to say catch up, but take care of it, and then we'll roll it a little bit better going forward.
Mr. Murmas?
Just want to let the record show, I got Alderman Wesley's contract scope of services for the train station in record time.
Duly noted.
Thank you for that.
Next.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on.
Sure. Next is sanitation fund. With the exception of I hope I get this right, Wooddale for a greener tomorrow. Really, the only thing in this account is the infamous credit card processing fees, and then we get invoiced from Republic Services. We bill the residents on the water bill. They pay their water/garbage bill, and we pay Republic Services. The one thing, the first bullet there that I will mention is we do need to increase the aggregate number on page 118 under the contractual services to 1.09 million from 1.05 million. I do apologize for that error, but we do need to bump that up. Two of the line items were, one specifically is incorrect, so we need to reflect that in the final version of the budget.
Okay, do we have any questions? Continue.
Sure. Next fund is the Water and Sewer Capital Project Fund. Again, this was one of the funds that we went over during the CIP meeting in January. The significant decrease is with obviously the treatment plant project being completed. It's taken a load off of this fund. Otherwise, like I said, we went through the majority of the items during the CIP process in January.
Any questions? Okay, continue.
Into the Water and Sewer Fund. The first tab says Water and Sewer Fund Summary. There's a Water and Sewer operating slide here. So high level, there are 4 operating divisions within the Water and Sewer Fund. Utilities, which is the potable water, wastewater, which is the treatment plant maintenance, which they maintain the plant and the remote facilities, and then stormwater, which pretty self-explanatory, the stormwater utilities of the city. And the totals here do include the transfers, the bond payments, depreciation, and the daily operations of the city.
Couple quick questions. Page 123, Senior water, we had nothing budgeted, and then we have projected 22,500 and then 25,000. Could you explain that, please?
Certainly. So you may recall, some time ago, we switched the senior discount program from just a pure discount, I think it was $10 or $15 off the water bill, to where effectively the first 2,500 gallons is free. So if you look in the next section, or two sections down, you'll see where it says UB Senior Discount Contra, and there's some negative numbers there, and then they go to 0. So those were the numbers when we were giving the pure discount, so we had to reflect those as a contra revenue. But since now we've switched it to where the first 2,500 gallons are free, and then it's billed after that, it's now a pure revenue, which we had to add a GL line item for the senior water to capture that, which is why that there's nothing in the preceding years, because it was reflected in that pure discount, where now it still is a charge, although offset, not beginning to charge until the first 2,500 gallons have gone through the meter.
Okay, and then discharge permits, we budgeted 1,000, was 12,545, and now we're saying 33,600.
Correct, it's the pretreatment. The pretreatment, yeah. So that is the, previously, the discharge permits were, it has to do with the pretreatment program and the pretreatment ordinance. So now there's a number of companies in town that are getting an invoice, a monthly invoice for the pretreatment program, and so that's reflected in that 33.6 number. Previously, those charges weren't on the books or being sent up. With the new pretreatment ordinance. They're applicable now, so we are sending those invoices out.
Alderman Messina?
The turn on and off fees, that's income we get, that's revenue, right?
Correct, that's the fees that we charge when we have the water shut-off days.
Is
So
there-
that's,
Continue.
Sorry, is there a line that shows the expenses for that, our expense for that, or is that just through Public Works?
yeah, it's just through the utilities department, and so
Okay.
it's done during the regular workday.
Okay.
So it's just part of the regular workday.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Catalano?
And the non-operating revenue, the tower and rent lease fee, those are, what are those?
Mr. Wilson?
Sure. Those are for the revenues generated for cell tower leases on the water facilities.
And all that goes into the water fund?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Wesley?
Connections fees, is that for the priorities that goes up to 30,000?
That is a decent portion of the reason why it did jump up, correct? Yeah.
Any other questions? With that, let's move on.
Sure, so now we're into the utilities division, which, as I said, is the potable water side of the water fund. Yes, there's a summary of all of this. The one thing that, the debt service is an interesting one, because that was debt service paid to the DuPage Water Commission for their bonds for their infrastructure. What they did, they actually set that rate to 0 for all their charter members. So they haven't eliminated the fee, they just set it to 0, which is an interesting nuance. So if they want to ever re-implement it, then they don't have to repass an ordinance, they just change the rate. So they were nice to the charter members by setting it to 0, but they didn't eliminate it, they just set it to 0. Capital outlay, all of that, those items have been moved to the CIP. So if you go to the next page. The contractual, like I said, there was a number of smaller changes in the contractual. The commodities account went up fairly decently due to the electric utilities account. There is an offsetting decrease in the wastewater side of things. I'm going through this year, between the Finance and Public Works Department, found some inconsistencies with what function some of the actual facilities were performing, and so we reallocated those costs. It's effectively net 0, but just we wanted to get it more in the correct cost center going forward. And then the only other interesting one is in other depreciation costs went down a little bit. It's a non-cash transaction, but did decrease a little bit. And then again, the increased credit card processing fees as that utilization has gone up over the years.
Any questions? Okay, let's continue.
So the wastewater is the treatment side of the ledger. More details on the next page, but the bond principal and bond interest went up commensurate to the IEPA loan coming online. The 2012 A series was largely already fully realized, but those are increased due to the IEPA coming online. The interfund transfer decrease is due to a decrease in the transfer to SURF. Going through some of the other ones, contractual increased dump fees and lab services.
Alderman Wesley?
What's the maintenance agreement? Projected $100,000, now you're up to $1,600. Page 131.
Mr. York?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Mr. York on those two.
Yeah, the $170,000 for the industrial pretreatment program includes a local limits testing requirement that we need to do every 5 years we're supposed to do it, and it's been a while. We just approved the local limits from, I believe it was 2011, like about a year ago. So we waited a little while, but we need to do a local limits testing, which is going to be about a $50,000 charge. So that's why it went up to $170,000.
And the reason why we waited, because the treatment plant was under construction?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one was a maintenance agreement.
What's,
At $100,000, now you're at $1,600.
Mr. York?
what line item are you looking at?
42019.
I would have to go back and look at that one. It was budgeted at 1,600 this year, and it's budgeted, it was proposed for 1,600 next year. I'd have to look and see what that is. I apologize. I understand that, but, yeah, we can look into that for you.
I do have a couple questions. Overtime pay, we're jumping it. It seemed like we were at 13, 12, 4, well, we're gonna be at 15, now we're bumping it to 18. What kind of overtime is this for? Is this like water main breaks, or what exactly is this for?
No, this is in the wastewater division. In the last contract, the wastewater division has an on-call person 7 days a week now, versus 5 days a week. So that's what that additional cost is for.
Okay, seasonal employment, we've never spent anything, and we're budgeting 6,000?
Yeah, we worked on this one last year. It was approved to put a seasonal employee down at the treatment plant to help maintain the new grounds from the construction. Since the new plantings and such weren't put in yet, we held off on that, but now since it's been fully landscaped, we thought it'd be a good idea to put a seasonal down there and try to keep that thing looking as nice as we can. So that's why we put that in for this year.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we can continue.
The plant maintenance division, really nothing changed of any, apparently of any great significance here. Slight decrease in safety equipment, other parts. There was a slight increase in vehicle maintenance, just to go forward trying to maintain the fleet.
I have one question here. Salaries, they went up from like 227, they're going up 17%.
It's a new position.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, can't get into it too far. But we've had an employee be out for an extended period this year, which is why those salaries are depressed the way they are, and we're anticipating that they'll be back for the next fiscal year.
Okay.
So it's no change, it's just, we just haven't been paying them for a while.
Other questions?
Storm sewer, you know, nothing greater, slight increase in the contractual utility locates, which are different from the ones we talked about earlier. A slight decrease due to a nominal reduction in the fuel expenses.
Alderman Woods, did you have a question? No. Oh, we're good. Okay. No questions, we can move on.
Sure. We're into the agency funds now. The first one is the police pension fund. We did discuss the contribution side of this a couple times a little bit earlier. Only thing of real note here, aside from the revenue issue that the mayor brought up at the beginning, is other is up due to higher benefit payments. Had some, you know, few more retirees, so benefit payments go up. So it's nothing out of the ordinary for that fund. It's just, you know, how it operates.
Any questions? Let's move on.
Special service area. Currently, there's no construction in any of the active SSAs that we have. It's just the debt service accounts right now, so we have the three that we just paid on, so it's just on the list of bills last week for the principal and interest for those three special service areas. And just the flipping between the interest and the bond principal is just how the amortization tables work. So it's just a debt service, pure money in, money out at this point for the special service area fund.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yeah, that's it, Brett. I'll make a motion to pass the budget as read, as presented.
As amended.
As presented. The changes.
We have a motion, we have a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Sismarski?
Yes.
Alderman Woods?
Yes.
Alderman Wesley? Alderman Sorrentino?
Yes.
Alderman Messina?
Yes.
Alderman Catalano?
Yes.
Alderman Jacob?
Yes. Moving on, I would like to thank the finance staff for their hard work on this, as well as for all the city staff members that are here. It's a long night. I realize you guys have all been here, so thank you. Items to be considered at future meeting, vehicle sticker changes to be discussed, garbage contract, October. Do we have anything else to add? With that, I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That